Here we are streaming today. We're streaming, we're streaming, we're streaming today. Let's stream, let's stream. That was a nice one. That was a nice one. Sometimes I do that opening song, and I'm not just like making it up. I'm just like doing shit, right? And sometimes it's clunky and dumb, and it falls apart. And sometimes it's like, that one was nice. That one was really nice. If somebody took that one and clipped it and was just like, spread that one around. Oh, I should clip that one myself. I should clip all of these. Make like a weird little compilation of me doing like opening songs. Anyway. I hope you guys are all doing really, really well out there. I'm having kind of a weird day because my sleep schedule's all weirded out and wonked out, and tomorrow I'm going down to Yonge and Dundas Square to participate in a anti-poverty rally that was put up by Poof, of course, a street blocking protest that we've got going on. In my opinion, what's going on to the disabled here is a national embarrassment. Like, there's no other way to describe it. Like, on the same, like if you had a child and you treated the child, and the child had a disability of some kind, and you treated the child the way that we treat our disabled, you would be arrested. There's just no other way to describe what we're doing to the disabled here in Canada. We give less to the disabled than the United States does. We give 3 times less to the disabled than European nations do. They don't have enough money to pay rent. They don't have enough money to buy food. They certainly don't have enough money to buy the medications and the equipment that they need in order to live a reasonable life in this sort of capitalist hellscape that we've created. And so Isabella Gamp, who is who is the organizer of this, has needed to take to the streets herself in order to rally people to fight back against what is obviously a corrupt injustice. Like, it is wholesale abandonment. There is no other term for it. And that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I'm going to be making a video about it. Going to be making because we've got to do something. We've got to do something for these people, right? That we've forced them into a position where they feel that their politicians are not responding. They feel that they have been abandoned, because the truth is that they have been. So they're needing to fight back, and so I'm going to go down Yonge and Dundas Square, 11 o'clock. Please, if you can come, please do. Yeah, that's the best that we can do. Well, let's get in. I've got a whole bunch of links here, so I'm just going to start moving backwards on these. Greenland, let's start with some good news. I opened with this beautiful shot of Ontario here, wonderful farmland. Beautiful sunset here. Love the colors that are caught in the clouds here. Absolutely wonderful. And so we move on with a little shred of good news. Greenland suspends oil exploration because of climate change. This is exactly what I am talking about. The left-leaning government of Greenland has decided to suspend all oil exploration off the world's largest island, calling it is a natural step because the Arctic government takes the climate crisis seriously. This is what we have to do. Like, we simply have to stop, right? Like, there's no technology that's going to save us. We're not going to suddenly get to Mars and be saved from climate change. None of that's going to happen. The thing that we have to do, the thing that we must be pursuing, is pulling back on how much fossil fuels we're using, how much carbon we're producing. We don't have another alternative. And because our leaders and because the corporate sociopaths that run this place are incapable of responding rationally to this crisis, because they are the primary causers of this crisis, because they are the primary beneficiaries of creating this crisis, we straight up have to start clogging up the infrastructure. We have to start fighting back in legitimate ways. Hey Ruth, how you doing today? Good to see you today, Ruth. Beautiful Friday we're having here. Beautiful Friday. Hope you're doing well. Just reporting, Greenland is suspending oil exploration. We need to do more than this, of course, and other nations are doing more than we are doing. The United States is still the major contributor to the climate change disaster. Canadian nurses are leaving in droves, worn down by 16 merciless months on the front lines of COVID-19. And it doesn't help that our conservative government is doing everything it can to abandon these nurses, right? Performing cuts in the midst of this pandemic, enacting cuts across the board. Because, of course, Doug Ford is a religious ideologue when it comes to economics, that impoverishing people is how you improve an economy, according to Doug Ford. Yeah, I would leave that profession as well. Absolutely, absolutely. Like, I mean, given the high scale, like, I say this of people who work in grocery stores, right? Like, the amount of, like, they were called heroes and essential workers and got absolutely nothing. Literally were just abandoned to the front lines of COVID. I don't see any reason, like, this is why I say we need to have full-scale strikes. There's the October strike coming up, October 15th, that will continuously talk about. I don't think it's particularly well organized, but I mean, we are to a point now where I think millions of people are starting to just be like, can we just pick a day? And it looks like there's a group of people who are literally like, October 15th, there's a day, let's go. Yeah, and what's the point? There doesn't seem to be any point in it. Yeah, and like, why would you continue working in a field where you're so thoroughly abandoned, especially in the middle of this pandemic? And I'm of the opinion that many of these nurses and doctors should be leaving that profession and getting into politics, and that we should let them take over. Like, we should let the nurses take over our political system. In my view, that's the least that we could do. That when nurses and doctors start running for political positions, we should vote for them. And in my view, that's absolutely the bare bones minimum that we should like, the doctors and the nurses should take the society over. They should be the ones making the rules. That should absolutely be the case, given what they've experienced, right? Like, you put these people through. And in my view, like, I view it the same way that, like, you know, people came back after World War II, and, you know, a guy would run for office and he'd be like, I'm a World War II vet, and you'd be like, that's a great reason to vote for this guy. I see this the same way. I was a nurse on the front lines of COVID. That's as good a reason to vote for them as anything, because they are the ones who have the closest to the marrow perspective of what happened during that crisis. And, like, I'm just sitting here reading reports and stuff, and I can't fathom what it would have been like to actually live through this experience where you and your compatriots are doing everything they can to warn everybody, to help with everything, to aid, and to have this leader who is incompetent and sociopathic cutting your services and causing things like the third wave, which was completely preventable, just completely not listening to you, completely not listening to what's going on. So when these nurses and doctors get into politics, as I hope they do, we should vote for them. look at what's going on in the pandemic in the States. I would never be a nurse in that country. Yeah, and it looks like I've been seeing independent reports, and when I say independent reports, it's literally nurses tweeting, and they're saying that they're quite scared that this Delta variant, to many of them, is getting downplayed, and the Delta variant. And I've been seeing reports coming out of the United States saying that the Delta variant is going to be quite serious. That the same kind of callous disregard for human life that they had during COVID, when the yeah, exactly, fourth wave. But let's open the border. Exactly. I find it a bit odd that there is this sort of pound on the drum to open up the border, right? That Trudeau is even contemplating it. Like, I feel like we're in this, like, you know, the calm before the storm moment, right? That we're in, like, the eye of the hurricane, and people are saying, like, oh, the hurricane's over. And it's like, no, dude, like, we didn't actually do what was necessary to actually knock this thing out. Like, COVID's still around. It's just not, like, right in front of your face right now, right? It's like the climate change conversation, right? Oh, so much for global warming. Today's really cold. Like, you fucking idiot. Like, oh, it snowed today, so global warming doesn't exist, right? So, oh, COVID is down right now in this particular area right here at this exact moment, so it's over, right? Meanwhile, like, we are withholding, we're withholding vaccines from the global south, right? So COVID is still operating in places like India, South America, right? Africa. COVID is still going around, and places like China and Russia and Cuba, for God's sakes, are doing everything they can to try to ameliorate that. But but it's difficult when you have, like, one of the largest economies on the planet withholding the resources that are necessary to actually move forward. Ruth, you're saying that's not what I'm afraid of. They opened early. Not 75% is double dose, but we'll open again. I see what you're saying. You're just worried that we'll open up again and we won't be where we need to be in order to get back, like, have full coverage. Lots of question marks, honestly. Lots and lots of question marks. And I think there's a big reason. This is as good a time to talk about this as any, which is this the article? So, a wave of Canadians quitting their jobs, right? And of course this article, because it's from the Financial Post, has absolutely no investigation into why it is the case. Like, this is the thing that's really odd to me, is that these economists and these analysts are making no attempt whatsoever to explain or describe why it is a wave of Canadians are quitting their jobs, right? And I mean, to me, it's extremely obvious. Like, quitting your job, in my view, is a, like, moral imperative, almost. That if you can do it, if you can get yourself into a position where you are quitting your job, you should. You absolutely should. It's the primary form of rebellion in a capitalist society, the way that things are structured like this. That, like, the nurses are quitting, well, so are the rest of Canada. And yeah, they just don't get it. After 3 strikes and they still haven't learned anything because they're not capable, right? They're capitalists. Capitalists don't learn anything. They don't figure anything out. All they know is take wage slaves, grind them into a system, and profit. That's it. And they're not interested in governing, right? Like, that's the thing that people are really starting to put together, is that these capitalists are not interested in governing. They are interested in structuring the system so that they make money for themselves. That's not governing, right? That's profiteering, right? That's racketeering. That's piracy. You know, that's robber baronism, right? There's all kinds of labels that you can put on it, but it's not governing, right? Like, one of the key cornerstones of actually governing is caring about the people, right? Is making sure that everybody, like, making sure everyone has food and shelter is, like, got to be issue number 1 if you're actually interested in governing, right? If you actually care about the health and safety of your people, well, then making sure everyone has food and shelter has got to be number one. Yeah, that's exactly right, Mark. How you doing today, bud? Good to see you. Let's see if I can do it. Mach Deutschland vom Fascismus frei. I'm getting good. I'm getting good at that particular phrase. A country can't be run as a business. That's not how it works. Yeah, exactly. Because a country isn't a business. It's like a business can't print money. A business can't destroy money. A business can't go into someone else's system or some, like, government has high level meta control of what happens in the society. Businesses can't operate that way. Well, unfortunately, it seems voters won't care till someone in their family dies, and every wave seems to make that more likely. We'll see about that. This is the big report. I just did a video about this. Shocking poll finds many Americans now want to secede from the United States. Overall, 37% of respondents indicated a willingness to secede. So, like, this is huge. This is a huge poll, in my opinion. This is extremely telling. Dude, is this the one that has the... No, it's this one. There we go. This is a great little map that sort of breaks it down a little bit further. That down here in the southern states, of course, it's 66 of Republicans. So in the South, 66 of the Republicans, 50% independent. So you're looking at, like, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas. If Onward to Dystopia was in here, we'd be talking about Atlanta, and I'll bring it up with him too, because this whole block is is actually very strongly in favor of secession, right? Not surprisingly, right? The South is always interested in secession, but before we get leaping on the idea that this is strictly a Republican issue, if you look over here on the East Coast, it's 47% of Democrats, and actually only 27% of Republicans, right? So you're looking at, and when you get into the heartland, it's 43% of independents. So across the board, yeah, it's like they're already redrawing the map, Ward. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, because, like, people are starting to put together, and Canadians are starting to put together a wave of Canadians quitting their job. Like, at this stage in the game, it's full-scale rebellion, and every avenue counts. Right, and lots of people are looking, like, if I was spending any amount of money, like, I don't even care what percentage it is. If it was 5% of my paycheck was going to the federal government, I'd be like, man, we need to secede from this, like, because they're getting nothing, like, literally nothing for the taxes that are being stolen from them, as far as I'm concerned. There's a reason why there's libertarian movements in the United States that are anti-tax, is because they're not getting anything for their taxes, right? And in fact, what their taxes are paying for is things like concentration camps along the United States-Mexican border, things like the drug war, which is completely illegitimate and based on a lie. The war in the Middle East, another lie that spawned just a hellscape destruction, a war that they've spent more money on than World War II and has lasted longer than World War II. And not to mention the, like, Palestinian genocide, not to mention the Yemeni genocide, right? Like, this is what your federal tax dollars pay for. And then you find out that, like, oh, Donald Trump and Bill Clinton both were on flights to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile rape island, right? Like, these facts make it very difficult for people. Like, if I was living in the States, I'd be talking secession. I absolutely would be talking secession. Why are we paying taxes to this? Why are we paying for this? Why are we participating in this ongoing destruction of the world, ongoing destruction of our own society, right? The federal government has no credibility. Like, it doesn't do anything. Like, just take a look at Biden trying to put through, like, these infrastructure bills. It's embarrassing. Like, it's gone beyond cruelty, right? It's gone beyond cruelty. It is now just, like, straight up an embarrassment that, like, the American people are actually tolerating this high level of corruption and incompetence and evil, like outright evil in their society. And so I'm not surprised at all to see that there is a 37%, and this number is only going to climb, right? As the Americans get further and further abandoned, right? Election by election by election, it's going to become more and more obvious that the Americans are just getting abandoned, because they are, right? There's no other word for it. I don't know what word you should use for it. Like, what is it but abandonment? And as that continues, this sentiment will continue to grow. And like, there is a secession. Americans in many of these states can vote on independent issues, right? And secession is one of them. And it's been on the Californian ballot for the last few elections, and it's been on the Texan ballot for the last few elections. And really, really think about that. Like, it's only going to take one election where everybody finally just says yes to secession, right? Where a majority of people just click on yes to secede, and off to the races we go, right? And do you, like, there's absolutely going to be a cascading effect, right? Texas declares secession. You think, what, Louisiana, Arkansas, all these places aren't going to start to follow suit? Like, California declares, right? You think that other places around California aren't going to start to follow suit, especially once they start to see, like, so like California declaring secession, that means that all of the tariffs that Donald Trump inflicted against the Californians don't matter. They're just not relevant. You don't pay those, right? That means that all of those products are now cheaper because you're not paying this worthless tariff to a group of sociopathic rapists, right? Like, pretty straightforward shit. I can't imagine what it would be like right now to be like high-level military at this stage in the game. What, like, I've actually been listening to high-level military personnel talking in the United States, and I think these guys are fucking worried. Like, these guys are genuinely like looking at the state of what's going on in America and looking at the failure of these wars, and they're genuinely like starting to be like, we have to like do something here. Like, we've got to do something about this. Like, this, we can't just let this overt corruption destroy our country this way. I think they're very, very concerned, and they have cause for concern because the country is like on the precipice to balkanize, right? Like, the United States can balkanize. The fact that it's been together for as long as it has been is a testament, right? It really is a testament to white supremacy, honestly, that like they've basically been forging together as white people to fight against the evil non-Christian, non-white forces, and it's not going to work anymore. It's going to fall apart. Let them go. Florida can pay Kentucky's welfare state. Yeah. California doesn't have the water to secede. That's an interesting point. Like, they might not have but I think the idea is that they would still, like, California is still going to be able to trade with like Nevada. Like, California is still going to be able to trade, right? Like, unless they straight up have an embargo slapped on them. But if the federal government starts slapping embargoes on states that declare independence, that's only going to further the secession, right? Because like, that's not a rational way to deal with the world around them. And again, like, the United States empire, the federal United States government is not acting rationally, and it's just becoming more and more obvious. For instance, if a U.S. federal basic income is introduced, it may slow the process. But that's not going to happen, Ward. Like, they can't get through a bill that just says repair the road, right? Like, they can't get through bills that they can't get through like basic stuff. And when they do push this basic stuff through, it just gets funneled into corporations and then thrown offshore. Right? No one's investing in America. No one's putting any money. The money is not trickling back down, right? There's no major projects going on. There's no major initiatives going on, right? What are they building in America? Like what are they actually doing in America? So it's full scale abandonment, and there's no plan to put through a federal basic income program. All of the basic income programs that are happening in the United States are happening at a municipal, local, city level. That's what's happening in America. And there's literally no plan for a federal basic income. It's not in the conversation, and they can't even get the minimum wage raised. Like they can't even get the federal minimum wage raised. Like they're not interested in any of that. So this place is going to balkanize, and it's going to balkanize from the bottom up. That it's the people of America themselves that are going to declare secession, and it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. Like unless something significant happens, where there's like a sharp turn, and suddenly they actually do start acting like FDR. They actually do start a New Deal legislation. They actually do start doing this kind of stuff, but they're not, right? And so, and like, if the Republicans take over again, right, that secession anthem is going to really start pounding, man. They're really going to start pounding on it then, because the Republicans taking over again are essentially neo-fascists. Like, the neo-fascists take over again, and like, you're talking about abandonment on a scale that has a nation seen this level of abandonment? Like, you have to literally go to like barbarian states in ancient times to talk about the level of abandonment that these people are experiencing. Like, towns are being hollowed out, cities are being hollowed out. Like, the abandonment is yeah. I've seen this. We talked about this on the stream a couple of days ago. The Colorado River and Hoover Dam at an all-time low. Like, these are major crises that the federal government is not involving themselves in. What is your opinion on Keynesian economics? I mean, they work to a degree, right? Keynes, like, that period of time was one of the most prosperous in American history because of Keynesian economics. My complaint, of course, as a communist, is that it still maintains the power of the capitalist structure, which we have, like, clearly in front of our face. We see what happens with Keynesian economics, right? It starts to work. It improves the lives of its citizenry. You actually are redistributing wealth. You're actually helping people. But there comes a point where the capitalists understand that they can no longer thrive in the situation, i.e. they can no longer successfully exploit labor while doing nothing, right? Like, the capitalists are worthless. They sit on their ass. They don't do any work, right? We've established this. So so they become incentivized to dismantle the system that is benefiting everyone, right? And this is what happens if you allow capitalists in the discourse. If you allow the capitalists to continue existing in your society, then it doesn't matter what policies you put in, they will work to dismantle them. And that's exactly what happened to the Keynesian project of the New Deal, right? That FDR's New Deal was very Keynesian, Keynesian economics, but eventually it has to confront capital. It has to confront the capitalists directly. And when that moment happened with the rise of neoliberalism, the Keynesians were worthless. They had no spine. They had no backbone. They bought in wholesale to the lies and grifts of the far-right neoliberal fascists who discarded Keynesian economics in favor of this religious ideology of wholesale destruction. Like, and so I think, honestly, that's my biggest complaint about Keynesian economics, is that they don't create a transition between capitalist economics, like the idea that there's a worthless parasite that does no work, that owns the means of production. They don't transition from that into, and then the capitalists go away, right? That there is no transitionary moment. And because there is no transitionary moment built into the ideology, it will always ultimately backfire, because the capitalists will always dismantle anything the Keynesians do. And so ultimately, like, the Keynesians need to become communist, at least socialist, so that they can look at the capitalists and say, okay, the problem is these capitalists. Because the problem is these capitalists. They're sociopaths, they're pedophiles, and they're rapists. They're obviously sociopaths. Like, they do not care at all about human life. They don't even care about the lives of their own children. Like, they're rapacious sociopaths. And the Keynesians just seem incapable of confronting that, incapable of confronting the reality that capitalists will always act this way, and that they need to be expunged from the system. And because there's no acknowledgement of that, and because there's no argument for how to transition from your Keynesian capitalist economy to a Keynesian non-capitalist economy, ultimately Keynesianism fails. It doesn't work, and that's why. I mean, and that's the shame, because it does work. It obviously worked. It worked in the United States for decades, right? It was obviously working, but they just didn't follow through on what needed to be done, which is to confront capital. Yep, water tables are running out all over the U.S., yep. How many American refugees will come to Canada then? That's a really interesting question, right? Like, to me, it depends on what happens with the rising water levels, right? This is something I talk about all the time on this channel. So let's quickly Google Maps. Google Maps. We're opening Google Maps. Google Maps. It's Google Maps. I need to do a bit of research and find a better map for this, but I think it's absolutely the case that, like, water levels are going to go up a couple of feet. Florida is going to be underwater, and we know that they're going to run up to Atlanta. And of course, the rest of the coasts are in real trouble, right? The rest of the coasts are in real trouble, and everyone's going to run inland, right? So, like, New York, people are going to run into Pennsylvania, right? Pittsburgh is going to become a big city, right? People are probably going to run from Philadelphia, right, to Pittsburgh. Right, Pittsburgh is going to become like a pretty major place. I actually suspect like Toronto is going to experience a good influx because of the backwater that happens, right? And every city, because every city is built on water, right, which makes sense obviously, but every city is going to experience a certain amount of dislocation and a certain amount of destruction as the water levels rise, right? Like and this is going to happen. And so when you're talking about like your this is a great question, like Seattle, right? I feel like most Americans are just going to end up going like inland, right? That like people will run from Seattle to like Leavenworth, right? They'll run from Portland is, and like some of these places like water levels will go up here, but like, and then oddly, of course, at the same time as water levels kind of rise elsewhere, water levels seem to be in a huge decline throughout Nevada, as we talked about with the Hoover Dam, right? So it's going to be a complete disaster across the board, and there's going to be total chaos because we're not treating this like we need to have already restructured our economy to a war economy. Right? We need a war economy at this stage in the game, and there's no other way to describe it. Like, we need a full-scale grab hold of the economy, restructure it to a war economy. I don't give a shit what these capitalists think. This is what we're doing, and that's the way that we need to be addressing this crisis. But we're not doing that. We're using free market principles, which are doomed to fail. Like, it literally is saying let chaos reign, and you know, oh, the gods of chaos, the invisible hand of the free market, the gods of chaos will arrange this so that it actually works. Yeah, right. Cheap, easy desalination tech is probably available, but being intentionally withheld. I mean, that kind of technology, like, yeah, you're right. Like, it is probably available, but yeah, they're gonna wait. Why would you release it now? Like, why would you release it now? Why not release it during a crisis when you can force people to pay 10 times the amount, right? Wait for the crisis, and then you can really gouge people, right? This is how capitalists think. This is what they do. You know, they have a technology, they see a crisis coming. Well, why prepare for it, right? Force people to spend 10 times the amount, That's capitalism, baby. Like, that's what they're going to do. So, and of course, I mean, a wave of Canadians quitting their jobs. Yeah, because we realize that this system is psychotic, right? Why would we want to work for this? It seems insane that my view is everyone should quit. Like, we should all go on strike, and hopefully the October 15th strike gets this into these guys' heads, because like we are in the midst of a complete and total disaster. Like, there's no way to describe it. It's a complete and total disaster that we are just sleeping on. We're just completely sleepwalking to it. And in the meantime, Jeff Bezos picks 18-year-old Dutch student for Blue Origin rocket launch. Oliver Damon will fly to the edge of space after another passenger who paid $28 million for the seat had a scheduling conflict. Imagine that you have a scheduling conflict that costs you $28 million, and that's just fine. You're just like, $28 million. Well, okay. I have a scheduling conflict. I've got to go to the ballet or something, right? Like, this is where we're at. That we're sitting here talking about a climate catastrophe that is going to threaten existentially our way of life, if not our species. And Jeff Bezos has people just blowing $28 million so that they can get a ride into space. Like, people are going to look back on this, if there are any survivors, people are going to look back on this period of time and just be like, oh, this is what it was like during the fall of the Roman Empire, right? Like, Nero playing his fiddle while Rome burned, kind of crazy nonsense, right? Like, just, oh, this is the irrational, hysterical, overwhelming sociopathic nature of capital, right? It's right in front of us. And my big fear, of course, is that if you start seeing like secession happening, right? So think about the South seceding. Well, this means that the South can start making its own laws, and we'll have just a return of slavery, right? Why shouldn't that happen? Like, we already have like slave labor happening throughout the prison system, right? Like, as the society declines in this way, and as our wealthiest citizens who are supposed to trickle the money back into the economy abandon us into space, right? Like, $28 million. Do you think $28 million would have helped anybody? Do you think you could have actually helped somebody with $28 million? Instead, no, you're going to spend that on a ticket for a space launch that you don't even participate in. That you literally just like, I've got to go to my daughter's ballet thing, so I'll choose that instead. $28 million. I make that in 5 minutes, right? Because I'm a sociopath, and I don't give a shit about my workers, and I don't give a shit about anybody. Like, it's getting to be like hysterical. I'm going to leave this one up so that I can refer to it again. Yeah. Absolutely crazy time. And like, here's how out of touch these guys are, right? If you haven't seen this before, this came around about a year ago, and now it's starting to make the rounds again, and I'm glad to see, right? This is proof that rich people are so incredibly out of touch with reality. Like, take a look. This McDonald's and Visa partnered to show fast food restaurant workers can live on $8.25 an hour if they budget. Unfortunately, that budget includes working a second job and not having heat. So savings $100, mortgage rent $600. Average rent is actually $1,200 throughout America. That's the average rent, right? Average rent is about $1,000 to $1,200. So $600, you're delusional. You're delusional. Car payment $150, home insurance $100, health insurance $20, heating, oh, you don't get heating, right? Go fucking freeze to death. Cable phone $100, electric $40, other $100, monthly oh, okay. Hey, have you noticed what's missing? Have you noticed what's fucking missing from here? Oh, monthly spending money, right? Oh, so $800. Like, this is delusional. Like, there's no food on this list. Yeah, them. Look here, you plebs. Exactly. Like, these guys are absolutely delusional, and there's just no other way to describe it. I feel like I'm using that phrase a lot today. There's no other way to describe it, because like I keep having these conversations with like pro-capitalists, and I'm like, oh, you're like fucking delusional, and it's clear like right away that it's like you're talking to somebody who thinks marijuana is bad because they watched Reefer Madness, and like they genuinely think that slaving away for pedophilic rapists is like the American dream. Like it's shocking to me that we're living in this society that is literally destroying itself, and there are people walking around believing that everything is fine. Boris Johnson opening while doctors say pandemic could cause global reinstation of new variants. Yeah. Well, I mean, these conservatives have never listened to expert advice before. Why would we expect them to start now? Right? Yeah, minimum wage workers can't afford rent anywhere in America. Like, if you want to talk about the wholesale failure of your society, this is it. Like, your minimum wage is set to such a level so that the people at the minimum wage can't afford rent anywhere in America. When the minimum wage was explicitly put in by people by high scale like racists and genocidal maniacs like Winston Churchill, by the way, said that the purpose of the minimum wage is to provide a high quality of life. That food and shelter should 100% be the point of a minimum wage, and like FDR says this. And so housing has become so expensive in the United States that the typical minimum wage worker cannot afford a rent. Like, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. They can't get it raised. Like, that's not going to happen. A full-time minimum wage worker can afford a one-bedroom rental in only 7% of all U.S. counties, right? 218 counties out of more than 3,000 nationwide. But the report showed that a worker would need to earn $24.90 per hour. Like, it's your culture has failed. There's just no other way to say it. Like, your society has failed. Like, this is a failure, and there is no evidence that there is going to be an amelioration. Like, that this is what life is going to be like in America now. That the story is over. Right? The Democrats are not going to help you. The Republicans are not going to help you. And so secession is on the table. Right? Oh, if we're going to be abandoned, then we're just going to abandon you back. Why would we continue participating in a system of abandonment? I don't understand why we would do that. Yeah. You can't even get a room for a month in a 45,000 person town in the boonies for $350. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. My hometown of Portage Prairie, Manitoba, small community, 16,000 people. Lowest rent I ever saw there was $650, and that was several years ago, so it's probably higher now. Yep, BlackRock buying up 30 to 50% of the real estate market and turning them into rentals. Well, and Genghis, like, this narrative that these guys are actually turning around and turning them into rental units, I think is total bullshit. I don't think that they're interested in renting this stuff. I think that these billionaires are preparing for the collapse of their society. That if you're a billionaire, you know that the economy is going to collapse. How do you know that? Because you're the one pillaring the foundations. You're the one that's doing everything you can to plunder the society, right? Like, you're the one who's investing in the stock market, and you're the one that's betting against the stock market, as they are. They're all betting against the stock market. So they know it's going to collapse. They understand that. And when it collapses, they're not interested in like a rental market. They're not interested in any of that kind of stuff. These people can go fucking die as far as they're concerned, right? These people can go be homeless, all this. What they want is the land. That's what they want. The fact that there's a house built on it is completely irrelevant. Okay. There's a house built on it. Oh, there's a water plant built on it. What's built on it? Who gives a shit? I want the land. That's what I want. And no, I don't give a shit about dickering around with this idea that like, oh, I've got to like deal with like a property company. I've got to deal with it. No, fuck any of that. I'm not going to bother with any of that, right? I have billions and billions and billions of dollars. I do not give a fuck about providing a service to the populace at all. I want the land. That's what I want. And it's not even for this like narrative of then like the value of the land will go up and I'll turn around and I'll sell it later on. Like literally, we are talking about a culture that is turning into neo-feudalism. We are talking about feudalism, and in a feudal society, one of the only commodities that matter is land, right? They want the land so that they can have the land. They don't give a fuck about using it. Why? Why would they need to use it? They have billions of dollars. They don't need to use it. Like, and even if they could, right? Like, they're not going to rent it out so that people can like the economy has collapsed. They know the economy has collapsed. The people can't pay. They don't have money. Why do you want to deal with these people, right? Like, so you're telling me I'm going to get renters into my place, and then they're not going to be able to pay because I'm the one that's destroying the economy, right? And I know I'm doing it. I'm well aware that I'm doing it, and because I'm a sociopath and I don't give a fuck. So why would I want to get people into this space when I have to turn around and evict them? And I know I'm going to have to do that. So I'm just going to create that problem? No. I'm going to leave this space empty because there's no consequences for doing that. You can just leave these spaces empty, right? There's for every homeless person, there's 5 houses that are empty already, right? Like, I'm just going to leave these spaces empty, and if I need to use it in like a post-capitalist world where neo-feudalism exists, well, I'll just knock over the house, because who gives a fuck about the house, and I'll use it for whatever reason I want, right? Like, because I'm a sociopathic pedophile who doesn't give a fuck about anyone but himself, right? Like, that's literally the situation. The rentals won't work if nobody can rent them, just the land. Yeah, they'll probably let squatters use the houses. Well, because the goal probably will be to knock over the houses, right? Like, you're looking at like land that can be used for like farmland. You could sell it to some kind of infrastructure project or something like this, right? Like but like in no circumstances are they actually going to engage in a like binding contract with people who they are actively abandoning. Like that, just this idea that BlackRock is like turning it into rentals. No, they're fucking not. Like, they'll tell you that they're turning it into rentals so that you will just feel like, oh well, at least there's housing. No, there isn't. They're literally buying it, keeping the places empty, and then they'll knock over whatever house or anything they need if they need to use the land for something else. Right? They don't give a fuck about us. They don't care at all. We can go die. Right? That's literally what they're saying. Like, we could just go fucking die. Yeah. And they'll do that too, right? And they do that too. Genghis Khan here saying, nah, in LA last year, hundreds of cops evicted tons of homeless from government-owned homes. Yeah. And that's just a way to enforce their superiority, right? It's a white supremacist nation, right? And that supremacy includes assaults against the poor. And so you need to continue establishing that. You need to continue establishing that, like, oh, you come and moving in and you're squatting, well, then we'll just take our thugs and send them through, right? And it's just a further disintegration of the society. Yet another reason why people are interested in secession. Yet another reason why there are tons of police officers who are resigning. There are tons of police officers who are leaving the police force, who are retiring early. Joe Biden has been forced to double the recruitment budget for the police forces across America because it's so difficult to actually find people who are willing to engage and willing to become a police officer. Because people like, and I don't think that it's because people suddenly have a moral conscience. I just think that like the cowards that sign up to be police officers so that they can beat up defenseless black people and murder them in the streets don't necessarily want to fight a war. Right? Like, we are talking about the most cowardly people in the society. People who want to destroy people's lives for their job. And once the consequences of that, like, oh, these people are fighting back? Oh, the people who I murder in the streets and who I incarcerate, whose doors I kick in, oh shit, they're organizing and they're fighting back? Well, no, I don't want to be a part of that. Right? That there's nobody more cowardly than a police officer. They're not heroes. Right? They're cowards across the board. and the fact that they're resigning just shows you how like they're there to murder people. They're there to benefit from the exploitation of the populace and to and to protect capital, right? But if it actually comes down to a real fight where there's actually like people fighting, oh no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not here to fight a war. I'm here to suppress a defenseless population. That's what I'm here to do. And so it's going to become more and more difficult to do this kind of thing, to clear out homeless encampments, to clear out squatters, to clear out this kind of stuff, because less and less cops are willing, less and less people are willing to participate in being a cop, right? And I mean, one hopes that it's because suddenly Americans are starting to grow a moral conscience, but I don't think so. I think it's just that the job has become too difficult for these cowards. Problem is, nobody works for them. Only land will do, no service to the lords. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. As the daughter of socialist Chilean immigrants who fled after the U.S.-led coup that installed Pinochet, I can confirm socialism works on paper quite well, but in practice it generally leads to U.S. intervention and mass suffering at the hands of U.S.-backed despots. And this is, of course, coming on the recent proclamation by the Biden administration. Biden, communism is a failed system, universally failed system, and I don't see socialism as a very useful substitute. If it's a failed system, Biden, then what's with the embargo on Cuba? Like, if it's a system that fails, if it's a universally failed system, then why aren't you just allowing it to fail? Why has it worked so successfully in Cuba? Why are you embargoing Cuba? Is it because you're a coward? Yeah, it's obviously because you're a coward. It's the same ethos as being a police officer in the United States, right? You got to pick on small nations, people who can't defend themselves, right? You can't actually engage with alternative models and alternative systems. And if communism failed, then why don't you just let it fail? Why aren't you just allowing it to fail? What's with the embargo? Oh, I guess you might just be full of shit, right? If he genuinely believes this, it's because he has dementia, right? Like when people say this communism is a failed system, they literally sound like people defending reefer madness. They sound like, yeah, weed is bad because I watched Reefer Madness, right? Like, for real, this is what people sound like. And this is dementia. Like, it's just dementia. Hey, Barnabas, how you doing today, bud? Yeah, communism worked in the Soviet Union for 70 years until there was a neoliberal coup, right? There was a neoliberal legislative coup that came forward with, like, large-scale protests, tanks literally opening fire on government buildings. Throughout the 90s, this was happening. It was it was like Gorbachev opened up markets. I think it was Gorbachev. Is he the one? Anyway, he opened up. He privatized huge sections of the economy. He opened up the markets to capitalists, and it's been a disaster for Russia. So much so that Putin now do I have this open? Yeah. So Putin now is actually he's renationalized many industries recently because it's so obviously a failure, and his party is starting to decline in polls. Right? You see, 25%. The left party is actually coming up, getting +2. Right? The LDPR here is starting to gain ground. So the people on the left of the conversation, left of Putin, are starting to gain ground, and Putin's starting to notice. Right, so he's actually starting to and Putin has no love of America. Like, he's not like in love with these guys. He's just wanted money for himself, right? And now that he has the money, Putin's such an interesting figure because I feel like as he's getting on in his older age, he's starting to realize that my legacy is actually the destruction of Russia. That my legacy is actually just like Russia is a worse place to be because of neoliberal capitalism. And he's starting to sort of re-implement Soviet-style policies. And, I mean, it's very, how could you not look at what's happening in China and think to yourself, oh, yeah, I mean, I could do some of that, right? Yeah, Gorbachev and Yeltsin, that's right. Does your son have the sudden urge to play the sitar? He might be on the marijuana. Yeah, exactly. That's what these guys sound like. They just sound like embarrassed, delusional old men, right? Like that saying this kind of absurd bullshit. Communism is a failed system, universally failed. Do you think is it failing in China? Do you think? Like, really? You think communism has failed in China? Okay, old man, sit down, take your meds. Like, you think China? You think communism has failed in Vietnam? Okay, old man, sit down. Time to have your meds. Communism is the scary. It's communism. It's the worst thing in the world. Communism. That's what these guys are going to be like on the way out, right? They're just going to be delusional, terrified old men. The same kind of guys who complained about rock and roll. The same kind of guys that complained about the homosexual movement. The same guys who complained about marijuana legalization and reefer madness. And it's all dementia. It's all just like this demented absurdism that is like, when they're gone, we're going to look back on them and be like, oh shit, like, ugh, these were our leaders. These were the guys who were actually in control of like the nuclear bombs. Oh shit. Oh, like, again, I always go back to, like, if communism fails, right, if it doesn't work, right, if that's your position, then why do you have an embargo on Cuba, right? If communism fails, let it fail. Unless you're lying, right? Unless you're lying and you're actually afraid that if you lifted the embargo on Cuba, that the place would actually explode and thrive, because it would. Like, it genuinely would. Like, there's only, especially now with the embargoes, I believe I've got later on, here, can I show that? Yeah, get rid of that. I think I had a thing here. This is, yeah, here we go. U.S. blockade wipes out almost 80% of Cuba's trade since 2017, right? Literally, like, you're talking about an economy where the Cubans were making like $7 billion from exports and imports. And over 3 years, now they're making 2, right? That's like 3 times the decline. And you can see it here. Cut off from hard currency to pay for trade due to U.S. imposed sanctions, Cuba struggles to pay for needed imports, which have fallen by 78% since 2017. So if communism fails, right, what's up? Like, what's up with this? Like, this is obviously a problem. Like, this is obviously, like, it wouldn't matter what model you had. It wouldn't matter if you had a hard right theocracy. It wouldn't matter if you had a capitalist economy. It wouldn't matter if you had a social economy, any of that. It wouldn't matter how your economy was structured. This kind of embargo is going to destroy it. And there's no way that they can defend against it. And so if communism fails, right? If it just fails naturally, what's up? It can't possibly be that you're an old demented coward. It can't possibly be that, right? But of course he is. Like, of course he is. Like, who's more cowardly than Joe Biden? Like, he can't even stand up for his own people. Like, he doesn't even defend his own people. Like, he doesn't care about these guys. He doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about Americans, right? And it's starting to show, right? It's starting to show. Like, there's Joe Biden is probably one of the biggest cowards in American politics, like, maybe in the history of American politics. Here's a guy who, like, literally gets elected amidst an enormous period of disruption, and instead of actually doing something, just keeps sucking the cock of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and, like, the Bill Gates, these billionaires, just being like, yeah, come on, man, like. And communism is a failed system, then what's with the embargo? Right? And they can never answer that because they know. They know. Worth restating, Canadian nurses are leaving in droves, worn down by 16 merciless months. We've already reported on that, but worth touching back on again. Cut foreign aid so we can take care of our own. I'm starving. Fuck off. Yep. That's conservative politics right there. Cut foreign aid, we can take care of our own, but we're not going to take care of our own because they can go fucking die. Oh, this is a really interesting. So I am subscribed to Gen Zedong, right, which is like international news, definitely anti-American, and it's lots of Gen Z kids, right? And I love being on here because, like, I'd say like 50% of the time it's just like wonky, crazy, trash. Maybe even higher than that, like 70% of the time it's like really trashy memes. But in the comment section, here's somebody, right? So the real wage, i.e. the wage adjusted for the price you pay, has gone up 4 times in China in the past 25 years, more than any other country. U.S. life expectancy peaked in 2015, is on the decline, is now lower than China. Healthcare works in China. Uninsured Chinese citizens pay an average of $5 to $7 to see a specialist. With insurance, it's free. 95% of Chinese citizens have insurance. And just like point after point after point. Like, China is 9 years ahead on schedule on meeting its Paris Agreement climate change goals. China meets ultra-low power plant emissions in advance of 2020 goal. Hey, Demand Better, I hope you're doing well, bud. I hope you're doing better well. Barnabas, China and Viet and even Canada trade with Cuba? No, we can still go to Cuba still. So there's a difference, okay? That we cannot trade with Cuba. If we trade with Cuba, America starts to put sanctions on us. Starts to put sanctions on companies and won't trade with companies that trade with Cuba. That going to Cuba is not trade with Cuba, right? Like, we're talking, like, when we talk about trade with Cuba, we talk about, like, we'll send you some tools, you send us your sugar, right? Tourism has been excluded from that. Like, we can go to Havana. We can go there. But I can buy a Cuban downtown, like the cigar. I mean, you are probably looking at a company, like, there are companies who are willing, because this is how it works, Barnabas, okay? So if you make your company, like Barnabas Co., right? You're Barnabas Co., and you've made your company, and you're based out of, I don't know, Vancouver, right? And you decide that you are going to sell Cuban cigars, right? So Barnabas Co. goes down and trades with Cuba, buys some cigars, comes up. Well, you know where you're not going to sell your cigars? You're not going to sell your cigars in the United States, because that company has sanctioned you, that it's not going to do trade with you. And so most companies, when put in this situation of, oh, am I going to trade with Cuba or am I going to trade with the United States, decides, well, I'm going to trade with the United States, right? And so you as a company can choose to go down here, buy some Cuban cigars, and then turn around and sell them, but you're not going to do business with the United States. But if you're like a small guy who's just trying to make a little bit of coin, right, and you think that selling Cuban cigars is fine, and that's a fine way of being, and I'm happy selling Cuban cigars in Toronto or whatever, great. You're going to be able to do that. That's fine. You know where you're not going to sell those cigars? You're never going to do business with? The United States. And most businesses, most corporate enterprises, aren't interested in engaging in that arrangement. They want to do business with the United States. They look at Cuba and they go, tough tits. So you can get that cigar, but the guy who's selling you that cigar, he's not selling it in the United States. A channel you should check out is Center for Popular Economics. I feel like I've seen them. Center for Popular Economics. Is that a YouTube channel? Should here. A non-profit collective of political economists based in Amherst. Yeah. These sorts of places, I think it's really great that this sort of stuff is coming up, but like the truth of the matter is that places like this are going to get they're growing pretty fast. Only 9 videos. Sure, I'll subscribe. Like the wow, they're getting like 2,000 views, 1K view. Good for them. Good for them. They must have like this must be really good. So the problem with and it looks like they're doing a pretty decent job. Like they need to establish themselves as centrists, right? That if they actually could start talking a leftist socialist game, they'll get not deplatformed, but they'll get shadow banned, right? They'll get de-algorithmed. They'll be deprioritized on the algorithm. That's been happening to lots of leftists across the board. Like that's happened to Chris Hedges. Any RT America stuff has been deprioritized. Who was it that was talking about it? It was the Redacted Tonight guys, Lee Camp. He really is talking openly about his experience with being deprioritized, and even Jimmy Dore has been talking about how he's been deprioritized on the algorithm. That it's becoming pretty obvious that that's the case. And unfortunately, what it's forcing people like Jimmy Dore to do, if he wants to continue growing his platform, is he's got to start swinging on more questionable content and towards more questionable kind of stuff, because capitalism ruins everything, right? And if you're a person who's more interested in your channel than you are in actually building a revolutionary project, then it's difficult to stay on the truth, and you kind of have to swing at kind of the trend of the day, right? You can't just talk about what's true or the news or any of this kind of stuff. You've got to actually like find the trend and talk about the trend, which I think is deeply unfortunate. But that's capitalism, baby. Capitalism ruins everything. Hey, look, it's us. Hey, look, it's us. 10 people watching. Ah, yeah. How you guys doing? Glad you're here. Glad you're here. All right, I'm going to look into that, bud. I'm going to look into that. Richard Wolff had a good one today. Excellent. Richard Wolff, always good to pay attention to. Always good to pay attention to. And, of course, here's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the quote-unquote progressive in the Democratic caucus with, the squad. We stand in solidarity with the Cuban people and condemn the suppression of the media, speech, and protest. So this is the imperial line, right? That the government is this despotic dictatorship that's inflicting the Cuban people, even though the Cuban people are in support of their own government. But we also call for an end to the U.S. embargo and additional Trump-era restrictions that are profoundly contributing to the suffering of Cubans. This is cute, Trump-era, right? Like, and as if the U.S. embargo wasn't fully established by Democrats and maintained by Democrats, right? So this whole tweet is very revealing of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's pro-imperialism, right? Good for her for calling for an end to the U.S. embargo, but they're not going to do that. The goal is to crush Cuba, like they're crushing Venezuela, right? It's the same story in Venezuela, that the embargo has been absolutely horrific for the Venezuelan people. We even have a UN report coming out and confirming that that's the case. Like, we know it's like the only people at this point who are saying like look at Venezuela as a way to like convince people that socialism doesn't work are like the highly deluded and the outright liars. But the outright liars are smart enough to know that they have no case, right? So they can't really run that grift anymore against people who know what they're talking about. Because the second you say look at Venezuela as like a socialist, oh, look what happens if you try to do socialism in Venezuela. It's like, oh, what? If you try to do socialism, the U.S. empire comes down and puts its boot on your back? Yeah, we're aware of that. Like, we know that's what the U.S. empire does. We're aware of what the barbarians do to civilized societies, right? And this is how I talk about the United States now. Like, these guys are barbarians. Like, they're fucking barbaric. Like, the rest of the world is actually attempting to civilize itself. And the United States is fucking destroying itself. It's completely falling apart, and they're just acting like a bunch of sociopathic barbarians, saying this dumb shit, right? Like, they're just a barbarian state at this stage in the game, and it's not going to get better. Like, and we've got to start like legitimately talking about these Americans as if they're barbarians, because they are. They're just going around the world and absolutely destroying it. And in my view, it is only a matter of time until they start doing serious action against their European counterparts. It is only a matter of time because China is actually stable. Like, this is the difference between China and America, is that China is actually stable. Like, you can critique it all you want. Like, you can, and I mean, I feel like you can critique China in rational ways. But the one thing you can't critique about China is it's stable. Like, it's not going to suddenly balkanize. It's not like going to suddenly fall apart. Like, the people of China are in favor of the Chinese government. They like the trajectory that they're on. This is coming out from a Harvard poll, a 20-year poll throughout China, that the Chinese people are in favor of their government. They like what's going on. Meanwhile, you've got 37% of people across America are looking to secede, right? So if you're the Europeans, right, and you've got the Belt and Road Initiative, Silk Road Project, and you've got the Belt and Road Initiative running from China right into Europe, right? These red lines indicate high-speed rail running right into Europe through Belarus, right? Well, you as the Europeans, who are you going to trade with? You're going to trade with the 1.5 billion people living in China? Or are you going to hitch your wagon to this fucking corrosive, barbarian state? And so it's only a matter of time until the EU and Europe starts to lean towards Russia and China. It's only a matter of time until these guys start to see that this is where the stability is in the world, that the stability is in China, and the stable money is in continuing to build up Russia and China. The stable money is if you want to stabilize your economy, if you want to stabilize your society, the way to do that is to continue leaning towards China. And as that continues to happen, you think the United States is going to stand by and watch? Like, and so what's the United States going to do? Well, the only thing that it can do, which is bomb places. That's the only thing that it can do. It can't do anything else. It doesn't know how. It's fucking electing leaders who are saying this fucking dumb shit. Communism is a failed system, universally failed system, and I don't see socialism as a very useful substitute. Like, that's the leader of the fucking quote-unquote free world. Like, that's delusional. Like, that's fucking delusional. I don't see socialism as a useful substitute. How's it working in Finland, Sweden, Norway, right? How's social democracy working for these guys, right? How's social democracy working for the Canadian healthcare system, right? How's social democracy working throughout Europe? Pretty good. Pretty fucking good, right? And, like, the idea that the leader of this place is saying this dumb shit while simultaneously his own country is being completely destabilized to the point where his own people, upwards of 66% of some groups, are saying that they want to secede from the Union. Like, so it's very difficult for me to perceive anything other than Europe steadily shifting its priorities and leaning towards the stable force in the world, the force that's actually building, the force that's attempting to actually trade equitably, the force that's actually attempting to improve the world steadily over time, the force that's actually planning, the force that's actually stable, right? Like, if you're a hard-nosed free market capitalist, you want stability. That's what you want. You want stability. Is America stable? How stable do you think America is, right? And so as they begin to lose economic sway and power with Europe, as Europe consistently begins to choose to prefer China over the United States, well, eventually the United States starts dropping bombs, right? Eventually these guys elect some neo-fascist who's walking around holding a cross, an American flag, and a Bible, and he's going to start bombing Europe, right? Like, that's gonna fucking happen. Because eventually they'll have destroyed all of Africa, they'll have destroyed all of South America. Well, what's left, right? What's left if you're not willing to actually, and like, while they're burning the place down, they're going to be burning their own nation down, right? Like, I keep thinking about telling this story. Like, I want to put a young lady in front of you who looks like Britney Spears, right, wearing red, white, and blue, whose name is Erica, and who constantly, after doing shitty things to people, says, "I'm Erica," right? Or like screaming, like, "I'm Erica." It's very difficult for me to end this story any other way. And like, the story is about a group of women who live in like a neighborhood, and the end of the story literally is Erica burning everyone's houses down, right? And that everyone's house will be on fire, including her own. And it'll be just because nobody thinks that she's the popular one anymore. Nobody wants to invite her to their parties anymore. Nobody wants to hang out with her because she's so self-destructive. And while she's walking around acting like she's the hottest shit in the world, right? Like, this is the story of America. That America will burn down everyone's houses, including their own, so that they can prove to the world how great they are. Because they're deluded, psychotic white supremacists, right? That they need to fill this dark, deep void of emptiness that is inside of them with something. And the thing that they have found that fills this dark, deep void is spreading destruction across the planet. That war, as Chris Hedges said, war is a force that gives us meaning. And if you are living a meaningless life, not building anything, not helping anybody, not doing anything to actually fulfill yourself, well, then what's left? Destruction. And as Europe begins to tilt towards China, it's very difficult for me to believe the United States doesn't begin a military campaign, right? Where does it start? Greece, probably, right? They've done that before. Throughout the 80s, there was a communist movement. Here's something that nobody knows. There was a communist movement that took over Greece for a period of time, and they actually did get rid of money. They got rid of money in Greece throughout the 80s, right? And the Americans overthrew the government and installed their own government, right? That happened in Greece throughout the 80s. Nobody talks about it, nobody knows about it, because, you know, communism doesn't work. You can't have successful communist movements. And so, but that element still exists in Greece, and especially as China begins to show the world that communism is the superior model, Greece is going to probably go back into that, right? And that'll spread. I mean, what, you think Belarus isn't noticing that communism is working, right? You think that that's not spreading throughout? You think that that's not having an effect on the regions? Places like Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, Czechia, which is currently all neoliberal, well, the populace is polling in big numbers that they want to return to communism. Here are places that literally experienced communism and capitalism, and big sections of their society are saying they want to go back to communism. And what, you think that as China rises and as Russia continues to grow and continue moving back towards communism, you think these places aren't going to do that, right? What do you think America's going to do, right? While saying this fucking dumb bullshit, like, what do you think they're going to do, right? Especially in the face of this. So places like Greece, right, Serbia, Bulgaria, and this would be Turkey. This would be easy. You're already destroying Syria. You've already destroyed Iraq, right? Just go in, just destroy Turkey, right? Or destroy Greece with the help of Turkey, right? Destroy Greece, destroy Bulgaria, right? Start going in here, destroying the Eastern European nations, right? While flying the flag of freedom and say that it's an anti-communism and communism is the evilest force in the world. And because you can say this shit and people actually believe it, you can go in here and destroy it all you want. It'd probably be a good way to rally allies in the UK and probably France, right? Ensure that neoliberal capitalism still gets, because, you know, you're saying, hey, look what I'm willing to do over here. I can come over here and do this, right? So it's better to be my friend. Which is essentially how Americans do politics, right? That's Canada learned that forever ago, right? That in this movie that I'm talking about, the I'm Erica, right? She'll have a friend. She'll have a friend named Candace, right? Who wears red and white, who's constantly running around apologizing, right? But who is herself very sneaky and underhanded and providing, like, she'll be like the little toady, right? The little sidekick that Erica's walking around, and Erica will be like full of energy and like full of anger and just constantly all this kind of stuff, while Candace will be like a little simpering, like, oh, I'm so sorry, and anytime she talks to anybody else, oh, and there'll be this great moment where it'll be someone like someone like France, right, like Francine, right, will be talking to Candace and be like, why do you tolerate this? Like, why do you go along with what Erica is doing? And the response from Candace will be, when if Erica's beating somebody else up and burning down their shit, she's not burning down mine. That's 100% the Canadian strategy dealing with the United States. That if the United States is invading Iraq, Afghanistan, if it's committing a genocide in Yemen, if it's doing all that, if it's destroying this and this, it's not destroying this. That's the Canadian strategy when it comes to dealing with Canada, with the United States. Okay, buddy, yeah, we're on your side. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Please do not invade and destroy our shit the way that you invade other people's shit. And the only thing that's keeping the Americans from destroying Europe, from destroying Canada, the way that they've destroyed the rest of the world, the only thing that keeps them from doing that is decorum. That's it. It's straight up decorum. That as long as these places remain subservient to the demands of the United States, they don't see any reason to destroy them. But if larger and larger sections of Europe begin to move towards Russia, begin to move towards China, yeah, the United States will start destroying them. They won't have a problem with that. Like, they won't. Well, you think these sociopathic, like pedophilic, white supremacist racists are going to care that people in Romania are white? I don't think it's going to matter. Yeah, invaded Canada twice back when we were using muskets and shit, dude. If America invaded us now, it would be the end of our country. Like, it wouldn't take long. It wouldn't take long. Like, not only do they have the population to do it, they've got the military force. And I'm of the opinion that if the United States actually invaded Canada, it would be in our best interest to just surrender. Because, like, I don't think that, like, I don't want to see Toronto get bombed out. I don't want to see Winnipeg get bombed out. One of the first places that they would hit would be Winnipeg, right? That would be one of the first places that they would hit. Because Winnipeg, as you can see, right, it's the number one goes right through there. There's lots of railway goes through here. Winnipeg would be one of the first places they would hit. That's a home city to me. My home province of Manitoba. I'm from Portage la Prairie, but Winnipeg, I know it well, right? And first place they would bomb and take over would be Winnipeg, because that would cut the nation in half, right? You got railway coming through here, major railway, and so you take over Winnipeg, you cut off British Columbia from Ontario, and you can't participate with one another anymore militarily in serious ways. So if America declared war against Canada, I hope our leadership would be intelligent enough to immediately surrender. Like, no, I don't want our cities to be rubble. Most of Canada's major cities are within 100 kilometers of the Canadian-American border. Aside from French-speaking regions, you speak the same language. Yeah, and Ottawa was chosen as the capital of Canada instead of Toronto because at the time it was considered pretty far away from the border, right? But now with like air flight, the way that vehicles work, like, the Americans will roll up there. It'll take no time at all, right? And literally, the only reason they just don't do that is because we're cooperating, mainly, and because of decorum, that it would look bad, right? But like, as the United States continues to destabilize, and as it becomes harder and harder to actually cooperate with them, these sort of events I feel are mainly inevitable. Right? Like, that it is kind of an inevitability that there's going to be more action, right? Like, what, you think they're going to spare the people of Greece because they're white? Like, you think that Eastern Europe is going to be spared because, why? Like, why? The second that they pound the drum of communism, the second that they start screaming about communism, and the Americans don't know anything about this place. They don't know anything about these places. They don't know anything about Europe. They don't know anything, right? You watch, like, Bulgaria, Serbia, all these places. Like, these places might as well be on the fucking moon as far as the average American is concerned. Like, it's gonna look really ugly, guys. It's gonna look really fucking ugly. and 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 the Americans don't realize how self-destructive it's actually going to be. Like, they are going to do this stuff, and they are going to think like, yeah, that'll put people back in their place, right? But all it's going to do is make people look more and more at China and be like, hey, this place is looking pretty good now. Like, this place looks pretty stable. You notice how they're not trying to fucking destroy everybody all the time? You notice how these guys are actually just like going along their business and building stuff and trying to like improve everything, right? And so ultimately what it's all going to lead to is it's going to lead to the United States being completely isolated. That it's going, and not only completely isolated, but completely isolated while the population is trying to pull the place apart. Like, any other narrative to me sounds like reefer madness. It sounds like hysteria. It just sounds like delusional, wishful nonsense, which makes sense because America is a very delusional, propaganda-ridden place. Like, the hysteria and the absurdity. Like, and what's so funny to me about, well, funny but sad about the United States is that so many of its problems are self-generated. They could literally just stop acting this way. They could literally just stop acting this way. Put down the guns, put down the bombs, put everything down, stop acting this way. Start focusing on themselves, start building up their own country, start focusing on their own citizens, start looking inward, start actually building, interact with the rest of the world through trade. They could do that. They could for sure do that. But they're not going to, right? That's the sad truth about the United States of America, is that their decline is completely self-inflicted. That they could very easily prevent it. It would be easy to do in terms of the actions that would be required to do it, but they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Like, they're going to continue their white supremacist ideology of wholesale destruction and fear-mongering. That's what they're going to do. Canada would starve materialistically as the U.S. is its major trading partner, aside from the fact that its copper and gold deposits are spread out, ruling out the possibility of mines and deposits being bombed. I don't know if I agree with that. Like, Canada is resource rich. Our biggest problem is that we deindustrialized along with the United States. That, like, we don't actually make anything. But like, if we made stuff, like, we've got resources for days. Like, we've got all the resources anybody would ever want. Like, I just that's a really good point, LOL. That's a really good point. LOL says, John, I'm American. The average American, I think, is so scared and barely surviving, they don't have the luxury to look inward. I think that's a really good point, bud. That and something that I came to a long time ago when it was talking about how the populace doesn't really pay attention to politics. I used to get kind of upset about that in my 20s, but I've really come to see that, like, people are so exhausted and overworked, and they're so, like, being thrust into this absurdist capitalist system that they literally don't have the energy to be able to participate in politics in serious ways. That to pay attention to politics is like, it's a full-time job in and of itself, just to pay attention to what's happening, let alone be able to articulate and analyze the structures and the systems with any accuracy, with any meaning. Hey Chris, how you doing? And it is all designed to keep people uninformed, certainly, right? And there is a lot of propaganda in it, which is why it's a full-time job, because you've got to sift. You've got to sift and fact-check and verify and come around and research and do all this kind of shit, which I'm hoping is a valuable commodity, which now is a great time. Hey, maybe donate to my Patreon. I got a Patreon down below. You can donate. Like, share, subscribe, add a comment, all the free stuff. Certainly do all the free stuff. But if you got $1 jangling around in your pocket, you get to join the Discord, which lets this conversation continue forward. People share things in the Discord, and I share them here on the channel. And I mean, I even amongst the quote unquote leftists that exist, I don't hear anybody talking the way that I talk about this stuff. Like, this This is a major, major, major turning point moment. The understanding that America is priming itself to balkanize, and and it is, LOL, as you say, the average American is so scared and barely surviving, but like. So it's very odd to me that like the leaders are not turning around and being like, oh, we've got all these scared and barely surviving people. We should take care of them. But fundamentally, it's because they're sociopaths, right? They've lost connection to the real world. They genuinely believe that profits is governing, right? And if you believe that profiteering is governing, well, then you can destroy the entire society because it's making a couple of guys rich, right? All right, guys, I'm going to pause for a minute, go use the bathroom. Chair stream, chair stream. Ugh. I've got to start preparing. I got to start preparing like a little video, like a little 3-minute. Got to find like a 3-minute video to play when I need to run off like that. Okay. I hope you guys are all doing really well out there, man. This is a really odd time to be alive. Oh yeah, here's a great story. Pizza shop decided to highlight exactly how much surplus value they were taking from employees. Every employee at an Ohio pizzeria made about $78 per hour they worked the day their owner decided to turn over all profits in a show of appreciation. The minimum wage, and certainly if you're working in a pizzeria, you're making the minimum wage. The minimum wage is $7.50 an hour. That means that the owner of the establishment is making $71 an hour, or $70 an hour, let's say, while you, the guy that's actually doing the work, that's actually spending the time there, is making $7.50. The system's completely corrupted. Like, the system's completely corrupted. It cannot be reformed, right? Like, this is an irreformable system. Ruth, it feels like the moon when you live in Eastern Europe. I lived in Romania. Oh, wow. We opened a Coca-Cola company and the first condo in Bucharest, Romania. Wow, what an experience, Ruth. How exciting for you. Whoa. It's much more Americanized now, but they still think like communists. Yeah, that's what an interesting experience. Because, if I'm not mistaken, Romania is one of those countries that where the populace is leaning back towards communism after experiencing this kind of capitalist period. NPR ran a story about the plague, and they said that peasants wised up that they were essential, stopped working, and demanded more, leading to the collapse of monarchies all around Europe. Yeah, that is kind of the way of it, right? That ties in really closely to, I think I've closed these, but I was showing before, like, people are resigning on high levels, right? People are leaving work. They're quitting because they're no longer interested in participating in this system, right? They're no longer interested in participating in this system where people just are getting abandoned, right? And that's the only way to describe it. Like, it's why would you continue working for this system that obviously doesn't give a fuck about you? Why would you continue working? And in my view, I mean, you guys know, I say this all the time. we need to stop. We need to full stop. And that includes quitting your job. That includes no longer participating. And I know that's not realistic. I understand that. But, like, we have to start doing something. Like, we have to start doing full-scale strikes, full-scale disruption. We don't have another option. There is no other option, right? And this kind of thing, support from secession, like, we should be seceding. Like, we should be seceding from a country that has abandoned us, right? Like, what is the federal United States government actually doing for its citizens? Like, for real, what is it actually doing? This is actually a really big moment that's definitely going to slip through. China has reportedly refused to grant Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman a meeting with her counterpart during a proposed visit. The meeting would have been the first senior-level talks between the two superpowers since a frosty meeting in Alaska in March. This is actually a really big deal, if you ask me, because one of the big things that Americans are not prepared to deal with when it comes to dealing with China, like, Americans are used to being able to just bully people, right? They bully they bully Europe all the time. They bully Canada all the time. They're constantly bullying every place in the world. They're bullying here. They're bullying here. They get what they want, and they do it by bullying people. Even Russia, they can push around a little bit, right? They will not be able to push China around. China has been here for 4,000 years. It is a civilization, right? They do not give a fuck what the Americans think. They do not give a fuck what the Americans say. And especially recently with the smearing that America has been laying against China, China's not interested in talking to these guys. That it's going to be the silent treatment. Like, they're not going to talk to these Americans while the Americans do everything they can to destroy themselves. Like, they're just going to kind of stand back and watch, right? They are comfortable with what they know, and capitalism is an extra job for them. Yep, even Google, one of the best places to work in the world, they're refusing to go back to work in an office. Yeah, there's a lot of that happening too. That, like, why are we going to, like, why am I spending an hour on transit or an hour driving, which we know is a fossil fuel disaster, to go to an office to do a job that I can do from the comfort of my home? And, like, we know that productivity in many places has actually gone up because of this. And so it's becoming obvious that, like, the only reason they want you to go back to the office is because some landlord wants to keep renting out the place. It's just like, who gives a fuck about that landlord? Fuck them, right? And once again, we're in this position where we have to confront capital. It's always about confronting capital. And the best way, the cleanest way to confront capital is to stop working for them, right? And because at the end of the day, they need us and we don't need them. They're parasites. Like, we should actually get rid of them. But unfortunately, we have a leader walking around saying, like, communism doesn't work and socialism's not much better, because he's a fucking demented old man. Young communists in New York City organized protests in support of Cuba. Good to hear. If this doesn't bother you, but this does, it's not your faith, it's your bigotry. For those who are just listening, on the left is a nun wearing the habit and everything, and on the right is a woman wearing a hijab. It's like, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it makes no sense when there is proof that there is more productivity. Yeah, because it's not about the productivity. It's about renting the offices. It's that there are billionaires who own these big office buildings, and they want to jam workers back into these office buildings so that they can keep siphoning wealth away from the populace. Government workers in Ottawa don't plan on going back either. Yeah. And, like, the capitalists also don't want to see this because it means less control, right? That's really what it comes down to for the capitalists. Like, sure, they're renting out the spaces, the office buildings, all that, but really it's about control. That if the people are working from home, well, how far away from just, like, it's so much easier for them to disconnect. It's so much easier for them to just be like, well, no, go fuck yourselves. right? Like they don't have any connection. Like it's all this like our workplace is a family nonsense that these businesses try to convince people of. Well, that's harder to maintain if people are just working from home, right? With surrounded by their real family, and as the arrangement becomes more and more just like business is business, well, there's going to be lots of these workers that are going to start to look at these businesses as, the sociopathic, ridiculous nonsense places, the demonic institutions they are. And they're going to start to say, like, why am I spending so much time on this? Like, it's not even benefiting us. Like, that's the big thing. People are starting to realize none of it's benefiting anybody. Yeah, Illinois became the first state to bar police from lying or using other deceptive tactics when interrogating minors. So not only was it not barred, but it isn't barred anywhere else. Fantastic system. Yeah, I don't know if they could win with the government workers, especially with their unions. Well, and like if you can have everybody working at home, that's a huge win. I don't understand how this is anything but a huge win in the conversation of the fossil fuel climate change conversation, right? Everybody stay home. Like I don't know why this is so difficult. Everybody stay home. I don't understand why this has become hard to understand. Like that we should be paying people to stay home. We should be paying people to disconnect from this system that is obviously structured to destroy us. Like this should be a real fucking no-brainer, but we're too stupid. Like this is the big problem that Canadians especially have, is that we're very gullible. Like we're very, very gullible, and we're very, very stupid. Like it really does take like legitimate, massive, like we really do need to put the fork into the light socket to realize that it's going to electrocute us. Like we really actually do need to do that. Like there's we don't seem to be able to figure out that like we have information, we have like people who are actually doing work, and like we have experts. No, none of that matters. We got to put the fork in the light socket, I feel like it really is going to be like when the waters rise and when sections of the coasts get wiped out, when water starts to back up through the system, when we have these problems, only then are people actually going to listen to what people like me are saying. But of course, because people like me are completely deplatformed and completely deprioritized in the public sector, because our voices are not going to be loud enough, Canadians are going to turn to fascism, like pretty clearly. Like right now, we're turning away from fascism. Right now, we are moving in a more leftist sort of perspective. It looks like, but once we're scared, once we're spooked, and the coasts are under attack, and like there's all this mass refugees and mobilization and all this kind of stuff, we'll happily turn to the fascists, right? Because the communists won't have a position, right? They won't be part of the panel, right? That like the agenda with Steve Paikin will have the panel, and it'll be a far right neo-fascist, some dumb centrist, and like maybe a conservative if we're lucky. Put the fork in the light socket. That's a funny euphemism. Hopscotching in a minefield. Yeah. But like, even worse than that, it really would be like looking at the mine and being like, well, they tell me that if you step on this, it blows up. That's what I hear from the experts. I don't know though. Better step on it, just to be sure. Like that's the Canadian ethos all over the place. Capitalism is like a shiny apple that is completely rotten on the inside. Yeah, exactly. Canada to welcome human rights defenders, including journalists, as refugees. I bet if I open this up, it's going to be like people who get ejected from like Venezuela or something. Refugees, the stream, UNS comedy 200, from where? You must overlook, from where? I don't understand, from where? Like, why is this so hard? Okay. One example a spokesman gave of a person eligible under this program is an activist against the regime in Belarus who had fled to Poland but needed permanent refuge. So, this is exactly what I thought. So, what's happening in Belarus is that there is... so, the tension between Belarus and Ukraine is that Ukraine has a fairly large, well-established, and militant neo-fascist right. That the neo-fascist right has actually taken over sections of territory, that they are well organized, and of course they want to dismantle Belarus and attack it. And so Belarus, is not just going to let the neo-fascists do this, and so they arrest them. That was the big scandal with this Roman Potasevich guy. Well, when you actually take a look at Roman, you realize that he's a neo-fascist, right? He's a neo-Nazi. He's part of far-right neo-Nazi organizations, right? He's a journalist. And so what's Canada doing? Well, when these neo-Nazis have to flee, right? When Belarus kicks down their doors in order to arrest them for being fucking neo-Nazis, they flee into Poland. And so now Canada is moving forward. Oh, yeah. We're going to resettle 36,000 refugees, right? Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll take those neo-Nazis, right, who exist in Ukraine, especially as Ukraine is organizing itself to get rid of them themselves, right? Ukraine is not happy that there is a neo-fascist movement, right? And so they're organizing in order to get rid of these neo-fascists. And it's only a matter of time until like Russia, Ukraine, Belarus all come together and smash these neo-fascists. And so where are they going to go? Oh, they're going to come all the fucking way to Canada. That's where they're going to come, right? One example a spokeswoman gave is a person eligible under this program is an activist, neo-fascist, certainly, against the regime in Belarus who had fled to Poland but needed permanent refugees. So we're going to open up our borders to the neo-fascists. And what do you think is going to happen there? So they're going to connect with Canada First. They're going to connect with the Conservative Party, with the People's Conservative Party, because they're attempting to take over the political system here in Ukraine. So they're going to do the same thing in Canada. They're going to try to take over. So basically, we're just allowing Nazis into our borders instead of, destroying them the way that Ukraine and Belarus and Russia are attempting to do. Like, and I knew it was going to be like this. Like Canada is like a white supremacist nation, just like the United States. We're not much better. So, this is like this should be considered like an international embarrassment. Like, we're just like protecting fascists. But if you're paying attention, you know. Trudeau announces $440 million for Quebec aerospace industry. Yeah, fantastic, right? $440 million for Quebec aerospace industry. Fuck the homeless, though, right? Get fucked, homeless people.
Hey, fuck.
Oh, she's using the PA system to quit her shitty Walmart job.
I was going to say that.
Attention, all Walmart shoppers, associates, and managers. My name is Shauna from Cap 2, and I just want to come on here and say Henry is a racist, stinky prick. Giovanna is racist. Elias is a prick of a manager. This company fires black associates for no reason. This company treats their employees like shit, especially Cap 2, and Jimmy from Sporting Goods, Joseph the cashier, Larry from Garden Center. You are all perverts. And I hope you don't talk to your daughters the way you talk to me. Shout out to Ariel. Fucking love you for getting me this job a year ago when I needed it most. Fuck the managers, fuck this company, fuck this position, and fuck that big lazy bitch Chris Price. I fucking quit.
Sick.
I'm out.
Sick. Ah, that was nice. That was nice to watch that. That was perfect. Ward, totally changing the topic. You made me look up and understand the word Soviet as an organizational structure. Oh, great. Glad to help. Glad to help. Anything that illuminated? Yeah. Yeah, the word for it is propaganda. Wikipedia co-founder says website has morphed into playground for rich and powerful manipulators. Yep. Like, Wikipedia is no longer, like, if you want to do, like, cursory research, especially, like, cursory research on, like, ancient history, like, history that is, like, long past. So, basically, like, I'd say like, 1700s, you're pretty safe, right? But like in the modern era, no. Like there's no reason to pay attention to what Wikipedia is saying. Like they won't allow leftist authors. You can't source places like the gray zone. You can't source places who are actually like informing people of what's going on in the world. I mean, it makes total sense. Like the CIA is probably is for sure taking this place over, right? Like it's so there's no reason to continue buying into the idea that Wikipedia is like a free, independent news source. There's no evidence for it. Well, yeah, it's a series of democratic delegating councils. You can't really like this idea that the Soviet Union could have been that Stalin was somehow like this. Dictator, like you can't do that. Like you can't do that. But you literally cannot organize a society that way. It's not possible, right? And it's really childish to think that you could organize a society based on, especially one that's this large, of this scale, that you could organize it and have the successes that the Soviet Union had. With like a tyrant in charge, like it just doesn't work. Like you have to be kind of like a child baby person to think that it works that way. But I mean, we are talking about Americans here, so. Watching Richard Branson's space voyage while watching people use GoFundMe to feed their families is just a reminder of how wild capitalism is. Yeah. Ontario government boards unions not tracking data on school staff vaccination. I mean, you're asking the Ford administration to actually do something. Like, that's just not going to happen. Like, the Ford administration is like as incompetent and stupid as a government can get. Yep, Soviet translates to council as in local councilor. Yep. So it's the union of counselors, right? Like, and there's a reason why this period of time in the Soviet Union had there's a reason why they were able to grow and improve, because these counselors were responding to the demands of the populace, and of course they would go and they would debate amongst each other and themselves about how to continue enforcing the will of the populace, right? And like, people who say that like communism doesn't work, it's like literally the Russians were the first into space. They defeated the Nazis. Like, I just don't know what you need. Like, I just don't know what you need. I mean, you obviously need to clear your brain of propaganda, but First Nation calls for release of school records to identify residential victims. Yep. Again, this flows into what I've been saying about this particular issue the whole time. We need a full-scale investigation, and we're never going to get that with the current leadership. Because, again, Justin Trudeau is never going to investigate his own father's legacy. Here's an interesting Socialism 101.
How do employers...
Probably not going to watch that, but I'm interested to see this kind of stuff keep going on. I've seen... Recently, Kaylin Malpin released a book, and I heard it in the chat. Somebody was telling me about it. How BreadTube is imperialism. That BreadTube here breeds imperialism. But I have also been seeing recently more and more Marxian conversation, more socialist conversation. So I don't think that this is a BreadTube issue. I think this is a cultural issue. That the major thing that people really, really need to realize and recognize is that fascism is popular, right? The reason why we're dealing with an upswell of fascism and the reason why we're dealing with an upswell of neo-Nazism is because fascism is popular. Very simple. People are looking forward to fascism. They want the society to be fascist. There's no other explanation. Like, why do people keep voting for fascist leaders? Because fascism is popular. Because they want the society to be structured in fascist ways. And they're happy about it. And they'll defend it. And if you call it fascism, most of them will be like, no, that's not well, and they'll put up a fuss about it. But when you actually analyze what it is they're saying, and when you actually talk to them, you realize very cleanly that what they're espousing is fascism. That's what they want. So, we are in a bit of a dilly of a pickle with that. What do you do about that? So members of the Communist Party in Greece, this is a bit loud. There we go. Members of the Communist Party in Greece burn an American flag, which, I mean, as I was saying before, like, you think America is not going to invade Europe eventually? I mean, they already have. In the 80s, they already did that. Yeah, Vosh and Destiny just repeats the State Department talking points, smear them or smear them, and then rage quit. Yeah, exactly. Like, they're just liberals, right? Like, this is the thing. Like, it's very funny to me. Like, people are trying to, like, find, like, weird titles and weird names to give people like Vosh and Destiny. Like, what I've heard, like, anarcho-capitalism, or I've heard, a bunch of different things. And, like, when I look at it, I'm like, these guys are just liberals. Like, that's all they are. They're pro-capital. They're pro-imperialism. They just think that there should be small reforms, right? And if that's what you think, that it's just going to be small reforms to the prevailing capitalist model, you're a liberal, right? That's all they are. It's just people. The Overton window has shifted so dramatically to the right that people don't know what these things are anymore, right? They think that fascism is conservatism and that conservatism is, I don't know what people think conservatism is anymore. But you see something like this, like there is a strong communist presence and sentiment. Like, the specter of communism is haunting Europe, that kind of thing happening in Greece. And I need to actually look this up, right? U.S. invasion of Greece. 80s. I bet you it's been completely deleted. I wouldn't be too surprised if this story got completely wiped out from the conversation, because, like, it was a very serious moment in Greek politics. Yeah, I'm gonna have to dig into this a little bit deeper. Yeah, I'm gonna have to dig into this a little bit deeper. Like, literally eliminating information from Wikipedia completely, just like scrubbing it completely, is absolutely. Maybe I can find it if I look. The time Greece got rid of money. Yeah, like, you would think that this moment where Greece gets rid of money, they don't have any money. Like, you would think that this would be an interesting moment, worth discussing and worth looking at. But you can't find information about this any longer. Yeah, anyway, I'll have to do some digging on this. Liberalism, conservatism, neoliberalism, neoconservatism, feudalism, neo-feudalism, fascism, neo-fascism, capitalism, corporatism, neo-capitalism, neo-corporatism, crony capitalism. Yeah, they're all interchangeable. You're right about that. Like, I feel like the people who are trying to have the like minute conversations and trying to find the minutia of it like are sort of missing the point. Representative government should be limited to 1 rep per 100 people. Wow. A solid barbecue amongst neighbors could more clearly choose their delegate to speak for them. I agree. I might say like 1 per 100 is a bit low, but certainly like you could go down to 1 in 1,000. The idea, like here in Toronto, we have representatives, and like it's our representative is supposed to represent like 100,000 people. Like no, that's not real. That's not going to happen. And that's completely you completely have Doug Ford and the Conservatives to blame for this. That this amalgamation idea that the Conservatives have inflicted on us repeatedly, it's completely failed. Like it doesn't work. I hope you guys are doing well out there, man. Oh, Dimitri Lascaris, today we're thrilled to announce the launch of Green Left Canada. We understand that capitalism is the core cause of the climate crisis and are deeply committed to an eco-socialist society grounded in true equality, peace, and a reverence for Mother Earth. So Dimitri Lascaris was the second place candidate for leadership of the Green Party. It's actually likely and believable that if Annamie Paul is deposed from her position, which still could happen, it's likely that Dimitri Lascaris would be the guy who would come in and take it over and actually make the Green Party meaningful again. Like these sort of statements, right? Simply stating that capitalism is the core cause of the climate crisis, simply having a federal leader actually stating that is massively important. It's massively important that we would have somebody on the debate stage, somebody there actually saying that capitalism is the core cause of the climate crisis. And so I'm hoping that the socialists are able to take over the Green Party, because right now the Green Party is essentially the liberals. They're not different. They don't really represent anything. They don't really speak differently about issues. And Annamie Paul has shown over and over again that she's willing to use gender and identity politics to deflect from serious economic issues. I just don't think she's up to the task, because fundamentally she's not willing to confront capital. Oh yeah, great. Don't forget to live stream it. We get a few boats, a couple of high-powered shotguns, we roll into Cuba. It's a start. SOS Cuba. Like, imagine talking this way about any place. We're going to roll in there with shotguns and take it over. Like, unbelievable. Announcing the least hated region in Ontario. I don't understand what I'm looking at even. What am I even looking at? The least hated area in Ontario? Alright. That's like some Gen Z meme that I'm not putting together. Canada took a risk delaying second COVID vaccine doses. Now vaccination campaign is one of the best in the world. Wow, good for us. Good for us. My position always has been with COVID, the COVID vaccination thing, is that it was always going to look stupid. So I never really critiqued it. I never really analyzed it too much, because it was just like not really worth the time. It was always going to look dumb. Yeah, I'm afraid that they're not going to, though. Like that they're going to come into this campaign and it's going to be Annamie Paul, and she's just going to kind of sound like a liberal, and people are going to be like, well, why would I vote Green? Like, you sound like a liberal. The rich are rich because the poor are poor. Jeff Bezos has $150 billion and his warehouse workers endure terrible conditions. Jeff Bezos has $150 billion because his warehouse workers endure terrible conditions. Yeah, that is an important distinction. That it's that pizzeria story that I was showing before, right? Like they steal your wealth, they steal your productivity. by massive factors. That was theft by a factor of 10, right? Or a factor of 5 if you want to do a 50-50 split. So like, it's robbery what the populace is experiencing. There's just no other way to talk about it. Yeah, U.S. sanctions, the trade has been absolutely devastating to Cuba. Like, and you got to think about how fast it's happened. Like this most recent round of sanctions, like even from here to here, going from like going from $1 billion, or just like between going from like $1 billion down to like 0.4 billion, 0.3 billion, right, over the course of a single year. It's devastating. It's devastation, right? And if you're living in Cuba, you know what's going on. You know what's happening. Conservatives can't make up their mind. Jesus, give a man a fish. Conservative Christian. He'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. Jesus, conservative Christian. You can't just give people fish. That's socialism. I love this meme, by the way. This like Star Wars meme. I absolutely love it. Yeah. Oh, you can't just give people fish. That's socialism. Yeah, maybe actually read that Bible. Like, if you actually read that Bible, you'd find out pretty quickly what's in it. Like, but they don't read. They don't read these things. Well, isn't this fucking charming? Let's just pause for a minute and get some fucking charming shit in our lives right here. Look at this fucking boat. What the absolute. This is some adorable shit right here. Are you kidding me? Making like a Theodore tugboat, like life-size. I feel like all boats should be like this. Yeah, you can't just give those people fish, then they wouldn't starve to death. Exactly. Exactly. I'm so glad that I'm so glad. I'm gonna open this in a new tab. This is what I'm gonna close on today. That's amazing. Yeah, I love this. So from Philip Agee, former CIA case officer, I had sent agents to Cuba to spy. They went there, and they came back praising the Cuban Revolution. That's your own CIA agents. Yeah. Yeah. Getting into the Green Left Canada. The Blue Jays are getting a national interest exemption in time for their July 30th homestead. Okay, good for them. Is capitalism actually efficient? Fuck no. The very fact that you have to pay for the existence of a parasite means that it's not efficient. Like, you're paying for people who do no work. There's your efficiency. Like, and it's very straightforward. Like, it's extremely understandable. Like, as soon as you actually explain it to anyone, it takes 5 minutes, and if they don't walk away from it being like, oh yeah, like that doesn't really work, then they just drank the Kool-Aid in this enormous way. Like, if I do all the work, and you do no work whatsoever, and I get paid nothing, and you get paid everything, that's an extremely inefficient system. Like, it's going to breed inefficiencies. Because, first of all, the workers are going to be less productive, because they don't get anything out of it, right? But why would I increase my productivity? I don't get anything out of it, right? There's this great Russian phrase, you pretend to pay me, I pretend to work. Like, I'm not gonna work my ass off for a subsistence survival wage. It's not gonna happen. Yeah, the new child tax credit will make American family life for the better. So they're actually putting through a tax credit. Starting Thursday, the money will begin to flow in one of the most important government initiatives ever aimed at transforming the economics of family life in America. It's the child tax credit, which Stephen Harper put in something like this here in Canada. It works. It's a basic income for children. And it's interesting because, like, this, for some reason, when it comes to, I feel like this kind of initiative gets put through by the sociopath class because they understand that fundamentally what it is it's hostage taking, right? That they can say, oh, look how well we're helping people with children. We're helping these people who have children by giving them money to help raise their children. But really what it's for is it's so that you can get this child into daycare so that you can go back to work. That's what it's for. They can pretend like it's appeasement, but it's what it is it's they're taking your child hostage and forcing you back to work. That's what it actually is. That's why Stephen Harper put it forward. That's why the capitalists are putting forward, is because they know that if they don't actually spend money to get children into daycares, that mothers will have to stay home. And that's labor that they could use, right? They could force these mothers into factories and force these mothers into retail work and all of this. But they can't do that if the mother needs to stay home and actually take care of the child. So it's a form of hostage taking. And if they actually gave a shit about improving anybody's life, they'd be giving that money to the parents. And to individuals, they'd be passing a basic income. Yes, I heard about this, the California basic income. I mean, there's a ton of basic income projects. There's a ton of basic income and like they're all like pilot efforts, so they're all like low funded, but there's like 50 of them. There's a ton of them. So what that means is that over the next 4 years, we're going to have like an enormous amount of information. But like you're looking at like 35 million. Like that's not a huge program, right? Like that's actually a very, very small program. Like Justin Trudeau just gave like $250 million to Quebec for aerospace. So like this $35 million is almost nothing. Yeah, and that's what makes it interesting though, is that it is state run, because it flows into this, right? That if you can successfully do a state run basic income program, right, and have a basic income that operates within the state, well then why do you need the federal government again? What's the federal government doing for you? Exactly. And again, it's going to be yet another reason why this separatist movement and these separatist movements are going to take hold. When you realize U.S. government doing sanctions and embargoes on Cuba to try and make their starving people overthrow their oppressive government must be the reason they are refusing to pay a living wage in America and keeping people in poverty. They want us to rise up and demand a more fair system for ourselves. This is actually like ostensibly the truth, right? Like when they try to turn issues like pollution, climate change into issues of individualism, right? Well, fundamentally what they are saying is it's up to every individual to organize with the people around them in order to overthrow the power of the capitalist sociopaths. That's what they're saying. That, oh, it's up to the individual to do what they have to do in order to diminish climate change. It's like, oh, okay. So us individuals are all going to get together and we're going to form organizations in order to overthrow these tyrants and these sociopaths, right? That's what they're saying. Yeah, that's how the feminist movement began. Corporations and governments wanted them to work so they could tax them. Yeah. They don't, they're not, like, the capitalists are more than willing to play gender politics and identity politics as long as you show up to work on time, right? Show up to work on time and you can be black and brown and a woman and gay and LGBTQ and all this kind of stuff. Just as long as you're showing up to work on time and accepting the wages, right? Like, they don't care. They're not interested. Racism is so American that when you protest it, people think you are protesting America. Yep. New GOP symbol, the plague rat. Yeah. Cuba's biggest sin is enacting a socialist revolution right under the United States' nose. The Yankees cannot stand anyone being free of their corporations, banks, and State Department. Being independent and sovereign is the unforgivable sin of Cuba, Venezuela, Syria, Iran, etc. Yep, absolutely. That, like, the United States is a white supremacist nation, and it needs to inflict the rest of the world with its white supremacist ideology. That's central to its ethos. And if you create alternative models, then you say these sort of fucking delusional high-level things where you're saying communism doesn't work even though it obviously does. Oh, the Bay of Tweets. Documents point to U.S. hand in Cuba protests. What? The United States? Oh, you know who this guy is? Richard Medhurst. Yeah, I wasn't even paying attention. Yeah. This guy is, I'm seeing more and more of this guy. That when, I feel like when the United States shut down a lot of media reporting in Syria and Iraq, and this guy had a lot to say about that, and I feel like it only made him more popular. I think people are, that media blackout really increased this guy's profile in big ways. Which again flows into what I've been saying about the United States defeating itself, right? So they shut down media reporting throughout this place so that they can bomb the region and not have anybody reporting on it. And that causes this guy to lose his shit about it, right? Which causes more and more people to realize that what the United States is doing is wrong. Because it is. It's like objectively wrong. The United States is like the Nazis on the world stage right now. And it's just causing more and more people to gravitate to people like Richard Medhurst. So it's self-defeating, right? But the United States, like, they're so dementia-ridden and so, like, taken over by these corporate sociopaths that they don't see it. They don't understand. It's like that Pepsi commercial, right? Like, I play that Pepsi commercial of Kylie Jenner going and giving, like, a can of Pepsi to the police, and that makes everybody celebrate, and, like, everybody stands down and, like, all this kind of stuff. Like, that's fucking completely disassociated from reality. And it's delusional. And the idea that you could take that commercial and put it in front of people, and they would be like, yeah, this was great. Like, you have to be completely detached from reality. And because they're completely detached from reality. And so when they do stuff like do a media blackout in this area so that they can bomb it, they don't realize that it's defeating themselves because it's empowering voices like Richard Medhurst, right? Which furthers the ball down to this shit happening. The balkanization and the secession of states from the Union, which, in my view, is an inevitability at this point. The only way to prevent this would be to do a full-scale, like, actual New Deal style program. They're not going to do that. They're not going to fucking do that. Why, yes, I willingly bombed an airplane and committed terrorism, but I was trying to free Cuba. Posada Careles, 1976. Oh, man, I hope they don't invade Cuba. I hope they don't invade Cuba, dude. I hope they don't invade Cuba. That would be really heartbreaking. Cuba has worked so hard. It's worked so hard to try to build, like, a fair, equitable society. It's worked so hard to try and do something nice for its own citizens, to live, like, free and independent. It'd be so heartbreaking if they just started bombing Cuba. And they could. Like, they could. We are talking about, like, an empire that's in decline. We are talking about an empire that is dementia-ridden. Like, both Joe Biden and Donald Trump have dementia. Like, and if they continue on this trajectory, it's just going to be another dementia-ridden lunatic. Yeah, social media influencers are a problem, targets to be made example of. Well, any independent thinking. Anybody who has independent thought has to be ignored or defeated, right? Like Noam Chomsky. Like Noam Chomsky is an independent thinker. He has his own opinions and he has his own thoughts, right? And he's completely blacklisted from corporate media. He cannot get on corporate media. No one will do an interview with this guy, right? He's the most well-cited intellectual in the West. What are they going to say when conditions in Cuba haven't improved since American occupation? They won't talk about that. They don't give a shit about that. Like they just won't talk about it. Like that, Cuba will turn into Haiti, right? Just another one of these quote unquote shithole countries, right? They'll blame communism, right? They don't care. They're not interested in any of that. They literally just don't want successful models. They just don't want, and like this goes back to what they were doing in the 70s over here in Vietnam and Cambodia. And they were explicit, right? It was to staunch the spread of communism, right? Because it's only failed economic systems and failed ideological systems that spread, right? It's only failed systems that spread. And they leveled Vietnam to the point where they grounded their bombers because there was no more targets to bomb, right? They ran out of shit to bomb in Vietnam. And it was done explicitly to staunch the spread of communism. What, you think they're not going to use that same, now that they're dementia-ridden, now that they're turning into a lunatic society, what, you think they're going to spare Cuba? Why? It is actually very difficult for me to believe that Cuba doesn't get bombed. Like, I just a bombing campaign of the Cuban people. Yeah, it's right here. Be easy to do, right? Like, that's what this is all about. Like, they want to bomb this place. They want to bomb Venezuela too. Like, and how easy would it be to like bomb this place? You've got Gitmo right here. Right, Guantanamo Bay, it's right there. Like, you set up a military base here, you use this as a lily pad, jump into Venezuela, start bombing the place, right? That's how Americans work, right? And the only reason they're talking about Cuba is because they want to bomb it. And I hope they don't. I hope they don't. And so they're not interested in, like, improving. They won't talk about it. They'll just bomb the shit out of Cuba, be like, yep, we're cleansing the world of communism. Right? They'll bomb the shit out of it. Cleanse the world of communism, and then we'll never hear about Cuba ever again. They just won't talk about it. That's all. The creator of Dogecoin says he now believes that all cryptocurrency is horrible. Yeah, of course it is. I wonder what his rationale is. No, the only thing you need to know about cryptocurrency to realize that it's a fucking horrible disaster is that it takes the same amount of energy to keep Bitcoin going as it does to power the country of Argentina, right? So the same amount of power for Argentina to keep Bitcoin going. And what's Bitcoin used for? It's so that pedophiles can trade sex slaves with one another. That's what Bitcoin is for. It's so that these psychopath billionaires can go to Jeffrey Epstein's island and they can trade sex slaves with one another. That's what Bitcoin's for. Like, shut this shit down. Fucking shut it down. It's the VHS system versus beta. Technically, beta was better. You're one of those guys, eh, Ward? You're like, beta was better. Beta was better. They have a gift shop in Disney font. It's messed up. Yeah. This is all fucking messed up, dude. The whole thing is fucking messed up. Let's see what this guy has to say about... You know what? This is short enough. I'm just going to read it. In a scathing and eye-opening Twitter thread, the co-creator of popular altcoin Dogecoin, Jackson Palmer, eviscerated the technology and community behind cryptocurrencies in general. It was a blistering takedown. After years of studying it, Palmer wrote, I believe that cryptocurrency is an inherently right-wing, hyper-capitalistic technology built primarily to amplify the wealth of its proponents through a combination of tax avoidance, diminished regulatory oversight, and artificially enforced scarcity. The thread makes it very clear that unlike Dogecoin creator Billy Marcus, who recently decided to invest in the token himself, Palmer believes the crypto industry promotes exactly the kind of financial systems it claims to replace. It's also convincingly argued, a reminder, that cryptocurrency offer very little in terms of protection to those they end up victimizing. The cryptocurrency industry leverages a network of shady business connections, bot influencers, and pay-for-play media outlets to perpetuate a cult-like get-rich-quick funnel designed to extract new money from financially desperate and naive, Palmer wrote in the thread. In other words, like traditional financial systems, the crypto industry serves to separate the haves from the have-nots. Financial exploitation undoubtedly existed before cryptocurrency, but cryptocurrency is almost purpose-built to make the funnel of profiteering more efficient for those at the top and less safeguarded for the vulnerable, he argued. He has a point. The industry has been rife with scams and embezzlement schemes that have only served to undermine the legitimacy of a technology meant to put an end to a profiteering Wall Street. In fact, it's only getting worse. Americans lost more than 80 million in crypto scams between October 2020 and June 2021, a rise of 1,000% year over year, according to the Federal Trade Commission. Despite the total lack of safety precautions for the most vulnerable, U.S. regulators have done little to change that dangerous vacuum. Cryptocurrency is like taking the worst parts of today's capitalist system, corruption, fraud, inequality, and using software to technically limit the use of interventions, audits, regulation, taxation, which serve as protections or safety nets for the average person, Palmer wrote. This is the type of dangerous free-for-all capitalism cryptocurrency was unfortunately architected to facilitate since its inception, Palmer argued. In short, Palmer has called it quits with crypto, saying it doesn't align with his politics or belief system. Dogecoin was, after all, meant to be a joke cryptocurrency that skewered the very nature of the then burgeoning industry. But with its tremendous rise in value, in large part driven by Tesla CEO Elon Musk, the joke turned into exactly the kind of thing it was making fun of in the first place. And Palmer is sick and tired of having to explain why that's a really bad thing. Well, hello there, Silverlight. I don't think I've ever seen you in here. Good to see you. Glad you're here. Clearly, beta was better technically. I think it was porn that made the difference. You're probably right. You can't fight porn. Where porn goes, we will follow. One big issue with crypto right now is the amount of leverage they can use. 100 times or more insanity. Yeah, it doesn't, the system doesn't work. It doesn't actually improve anything, and it's a net drain, right? As I always say, Bitcoin, to power Bitcoin, to keep Bitcoin going, requires the same amount of power generation as the country of Argentina. It's a disaster. And for what? So billionaires can trade sex slaves with one another. That's what it's for. That's what it's obviously going to be used for. It's so that when Bill Gates and Donald Trump go to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile sex island, they can trade sex slaves with one another using Bitcoin. It's untraceable. You don't know what they're spending the money on, right? Actually, Bitcoin was created after 2008 capitalist collapse to take power away from the big banks and put it back into your hands. Those are corporate talking points, yeah. It isn't a coincidence crypto just crashed recently. The timing is suspicious. I think I know what's going on vaguely. Oh, do tell, Silverlight. Do tell. I'm always interested in other perspectives. Huge condo tower proposed for the site of the beloved Imperial Pub in Toronto? Yeah, of course. Build more condos. That's what we need. Definitely don't need to just use the housing we have. Just got to keep building more condos so they can sit empty. Biden. Fair competition is what America, the wealthiest, most innovative nation in the world, little asterisks, genocide, slavery, war, occupation, sanctions, assassinations, corruption. The U.S. government engineers the collapse of socialist governments to prevent us from finding out how much better our lives would be if we dumped capitalism. Change my mind. Yep, this is it in a nutshell. Yeah, the GameStop story has been still ongoing. I've been paying attention to my. I have 2 shares in GameStop. Right now, there's a dip. It's down a little bit, and I suspect that they're doing everything they can to convince people that the story's over. I mean, do we need to expose Wall Street's fraud in a big way? Like, I mean, it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear that Wall Street is a fraudulent institution. I know minorities who have gotten out of poverty and leveled the playing field. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you roll dice enough, you're gonna hit the number you need, right? It's just that the die are getting more and more numbers are happening on the die, right? So you roll the dice enough, yeah, and then you know it's like that's like a gambler telling you just need to keep gambling, right? Doesn't mean anything. People have been educated about money in general, though, due to the interest in crypto. Well, and I think more and more people are realizing, like, important key things about the American economy, like the Federal Reserve is a private bank. I think that's a big one. People cannot get their head around it, like, and it blows them away to find out that the Federal Reserve is a private bank. And honestly, that, in my view, has a lot to do with the corruption that exists throughout the United States. That there's a private bank that is owned. That there's a private bank that owns the currency. Like, that creates a wage slave situation by default. The American government owns the most. The U.S. military knows how to use it. Disney has their own coin called Dragon Coin for FastPass and Disney dollars. But all of these, like, separate currencies, all of these currencies are only going to serve to accelerate this, right? Like, why would you allow a currency into your society? If you want a stable society, you want a stable currency. And basically introducing all of these cryptocurrencies is going to destabilize your own currency. What if people start using Dragon Coin instead of the American dollar? Right? What if people start using Bitcoin instead of the American dollar? Right? Like, it's a fucking disaster for stability, right? And as I've said before on the channel, right? As China becomes more and more stable and looks more and more stable, European nations, African nations are going to start leaning more towards China, and the United States is going to get fucking abandoned completely. Silverlight, I made gambling machines for 15 years. They're more fair than the stock market. Oh, that's saying something. Yeah, because I guess with a gambling machine, it's technically possible you'll win, right? Shopping ports use blockchain technology to secure their ledgers. Bitcoin is finite. The US dollar isn't. The US dollar is finite. The US dollar is for sure finite. The belief that the US dollar is not finite is, that's definitely a problem. Because, like, it is finite. Like, the United States just went through a big period of printing money, and they pretended as though it didn't have a big inflationary effect on their economy, but it super did. Inflation throughout the United States was between, like, 5 and 12%. Like, it was really, really big. And I've got a wad of Canadian Tire money. It's only going down in value. Yeah. Like, and, like, all economies, like, all currencies and all economies are finite, right? That they have to work in closed systems, or because if they were infinite, they would be valueless, right? That if you could have infinite American dollars, well, then an American dollar is worthless. It doesn't. So there's a happy medium there between having no money and having infinite money, and that is just having some money, right? And you do want to have, you can't have it to be too low, because then it's too scarce and people can't get a hold of it, and then it doesn't have any value really, unless you can actually get a hold of it, and then it has enormous amounts of value. And so that's actually an inequality problem, right? And you can't do what we're doing now, where we've created scarcity by allowing like 1,000 people to have the vast majority of the wealth, and that creates scarcity as well. But it's a false scarcity, right? And their solution, instead of confronting capital and actually just taxing that wealth away and then redistributing wealth back into the society, instead of doing that, they've just decided to get the printer going. Because if you're a billionaire, you don't care about inflation. You don't care that some poor guy's money, like the $7.50 he makes an hour, is now worthless. Doesn't matter. With gambling machines, video lottery terminals in particular, they say that what the odds are up front. You can mathematically prove it's correct. Oh, there you go. Silverlight making the case that lottery terminals are more balanced and fair than the stock market, which is probably accurate. Hey Jeff, how you doing today, bud? I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, bud. You're coming out tomorrow, I hope? For those in the chat who want to know what that's about, there's a protest, an anti-poverty protest, Yonge and Dundas Square here in Toronto. If you can come down, please come down. 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Yonge and Dundas Square. Yeah, perfect, Jeff. I'll see you there, bud. I'll see you there. Any idea how many people are actually going to come to this thing, Jeff? Yeah, Ward, modern monetary theory addresses the issue of infinite currency. Well, and modern monetary theory, it's kind of incredible that it's only been in the last 5 years, like really since the 2008 crash, that really caused people to start to wonder. And like the modern monetary theorists started to ask like very basic questions. Very odd that the Keynesians and the neoliberals never actually asked the basic question of, wait a minute, what is money? Like, what is money? And the second you start to investigate what money actually is, the more you come to realize that it's a complete fabrication. Like, it doesn't really exist. It really is just like a manifestation of our collective imagination. Like, and big questions about whether or not we even need it. They're changing the name. Yeah, it's not going to be Dundas Square for much longer. The US dollar got off the gold standard in the 70s. It's been inflating since. Well, and it's the reason it's been inflating, though, Genghis, is because they keep printing money. That the solution, the political solution, anytime a politician needs money, is that they just print the money. And you can deflate your currency just as easily as you inflate it, right? Through taxation, through money destruction. That's what taxation actually is. This narrative that exists within popular consciousness, where it's like tax money is revenue that you then spend. That's not how it works. That taxation is money destruction. That you're literally destroying the currency, and to do that, that deflates your system. And what it does is it allows the government to print money and use that money somewhere else, while simultaneously destroying money. If you destroy the same amount of money, it actually balances it out. And so you end up with no inflation, right? But if your solution is, if instead of confronting capital, which is what you would have to do if you wanted to destroy worthless money that's sitting around in accounts doing nothing, if you're not willing to confront capital, then you just print money. And you just go like, oh, okay. Well, I don't care if this hurts the poor. Who gives a fuck about them anyway? Also, I'm willing to bet it's the similar, possibly even the same people who own the large lottery corp and the big institutions in Wall Street, banking and all that stuff. Yeah, no, of course it's the same people. Like, very, very few people own everything in the United States. Like, it's a very closed system in the United States. Most things are owned by BlackRock, and Vanguard is another one. Those institutions and those institutions own big shares of each other. So it's a very incestuous, insular sort of thing, where most of these corporations are actually owned by like at most 1,000 people, like at most, and it's 1,000 like worthless, sit on their ass, don't do anything billionaires, just like not actually doing anything of value. Money is dumb. Put that on a t-shirt. Supply and demand, today not in the past, is silly. I wish things were based on resources and actual work done. You know, a metric that makes sense. Yeah. Well, and Right. Today, like, supply and demand actually does make sense, but in the neoliberal worldview, which is not an economic worldview, it's a religious ideology, they've inverted it, right? That they created something called supply side economics, which George Bush called at the time voodoo economics. And the idea was, if you create big amounts of supply, i.e. give money to billionaires, then that will create demand, right? And of course this is delusional, because if you take money away from the consumers and you give it to billionaires for them to hoard in offshore accounts, well then there is no demand. It doesn't matter how much supply you create, right? Because demand is created if people have money to spend, right? Which is why something like a basic income actually works, because you give people money to spend, that creates demand that you then supply. And this creates a lot of aberrations. It's where the job creators line comes from. I'm a job creator. No, you're fucking not. You're not a job creator. The customers are job creators, right? If it wasn't for your customers, you wouldn't hire people. You wouldn't bring anybody to the forefront, right? You wouldn't exploit their labor. You wouldn't do any of that, right? If there wasn't customers to actually buy the product that you were selling. Customers are job creators. And if people don't have money, they can't actually participate as customers, and the whole thing collapses, which is exactly why capitalism in the United States is going to fail, because as poverty spreads, as people have less and less money, as they have less that they can actually contribute, like, they can't buy the stuff that they're making, right? And if they can't buy the stuff that they're making, then your economy collapses. This is like Communist Manifesto 101. This is like Karl Marx 101, right? That eventually the capitalists will suppress wages so badly and inflate the currency so badly that the economy will collapse, because people won't be able to buy the goods that the capitalists are making them make. That's what I mean. Bitcoin is finite. It's going to increase in value. It came out of Magic the Gathering. I know, that's the funniest part about it. These are the Stephen Hawkings of computer science. Yeah. Like like, Bitcoin, in my view, is a fucking disaster. It's an ecological disaster. It's a climate change disaster. Like, it should be done away with. The idea that we should have these cryptocurrencies sucking up all of our energy resources for nothing. There's no point. Like, there's no reason to have Bitcoin. Like, the only reason to have Bitcoin is to let billionaires get away with fucking trading sex slaves with one another. That's it. There literally is no other reason. So, fucking get rid of it. Canada's copyright lawsuit against Disney Pixar over Inside Out gets green light. Why? If you were a student of animation at Sheridan 20 years ago, you probably saw a 14-minute live-action, low-budget student production. Oh, are they saying that Inside Out, like, totally stole this idea? If you were young at heart, whether it's coincidence... interesting. Looks like Pixar stole the idea. Big fucking surprise. Capitalists stealing ideas. Never heard of that before.
This first clip is from Joe Biden, and he's discussing, this was just yesterday, he's discussing the idea of socialism and communism. And
oh, yeah.
Let's just be realistic, right? Any way we have ever seen conservatives describe it in the past, any action of the government giving out money of any kind has been labeled socialism, right? So Joe Biden is, in one sentence, deriding socialism, but then in another sentence, he's signing legislation that is actually delivering money to the people. So take a look at the clip.
Well, let me start off by answering the question relative to Haiti and Cuba. And communism is a failed system, universally failed system. And I don't see socialism as a very useful substitute, but that's another story.
I want to start with you, Anthony. What are your thoughts about this framing that he had, all things considered, when we put it in a historical perspective?
There are communist and socialist representatives in parliaments across the world, and they actually are putting forward legislation, working as functional parts of governments, right? And so oftentimes what happens is somebody will make, in the United States, we make a statement towards communist regimes that were heading states that led to very problematic things. I will offer, that we have examples of many different governmental structures that have been heads of state, that have been heads of regimes of countries that have failed and been responsible for huge atrocities. Capitalist systems shouldn't be left off of that table. And so I think there's some parsing that needs to happen in that regard. Remember that we went through a whole stretch of being able to...
I don't understand this thing that leftists do where they cede ground. Like, I don't understand that at all. Like, why are you ceding the ground? Like, oh yeah, of course communists had atrocities and all this kind of stuff. Like, why are you ceding that ground? Like, it seems like such a bad strategy. It just seems like you're giving any amount of credence to your enemies. Why? Like, literally, I think Richard Wolff is the guy that's nailed how to deal with this. Like, literally, just start talking about the capitalist atrocities. Like, why would you do anything else? I don't trust Benjamin Dixon. He smeared Brianna Joy Gray during Force the Vote. Not that I would trust Brianna. He was silent during World Press from Day and Julian Assange. Well, and honestly, like, from what I'm hearing here, like what I'm listening to right here, I'm just like, oh, this is just bad strategy. Like, just this guy, just the only thing that you should be saying to this statement that Joe Biden made, that communism fails and all this kind of stuff, is, oh, if communism fails, what's with the embargo, bro? What's with the embargo? If it fails, what's with the embargo? Like, it's obviously an act of cowardice. Like, it's obviously just like picking on a little guy, right? Yeah, I don't think I'm going to continue with that because, frankly, like, the only analysis from a communist socialist perspective of the situation in Cuba in regards to Joe Biden's statement that has any validity whatsoever is the question, what's with the embargo then? If it fails, like, if the system fails, what's with the embargo? Let the system fail then. Let the entire world watch it fail. But the reality is that it doesn't fail. That communism is a superior system. It has better outcomes for its citizenry. That all of the quote-unquote atrocities that they try to put at the feet of China and Russia are things like dealing with natural disasters, famines. Like, they pick on the Holodomor, but like that's like a series of famines that were happening through the Tsarist period, and then the last one happened under the communists, and then the famine stopped in the region. So it's like, oh, big fucking atrocity here. The Holodomor itself never actually called an atrocity by the United States because they know that it was a fucking famine. And it's the same story with Mao in China, right? You're trying to do major agricultural reform in areas that are like literally desertified. A famine rolls through, as has done in the region previously, and now there's no famines in that region. What do you fucking think changed, right? And like, Malcolm X said Fidel Castro was the only white guy he ever liked. Yeah. And like, so when these quote-unquote leftists, right, come up in defense of socialism, right, like, they don't know what they're fucking talking about, and they cede major ground. They pretend as though these capitalists are anything but lying propagandist sociopaths, and then they don't actually like fucking, it's so easy to grill these capitalists. Like, are you kidding me? Like, the beginning of capitalism, American capitalism, begins with the enslavement of the African continent, the genocide of the First Nations people, the genocide of the Incans, the Mayans, the Aztecs, then the building of this society through black slavery, followed by a civil war that destroyed the country, and then ultimately culminates in not one but 2 world wars on the European continent that destroy it, that from the Nazis, that are defeated by communist Russia. The communists defeat the Nazis, who were capitalists. And then that takes us into the modern period where the United States has never not known war. The United States has destroyed Vietnam, the United States has destroyed Cambodia, the Middle East, South America. Like, what business does a capitalist have talking about atrocities? What a fucking embarrassment. And then when they do start talking about the atrocities, it's literally like, well, there was a famine in Russia, and there was a famine in China, you know. You guys sort of mishandled those famines. We Westerners say, well, we're literally bombing Vietnam to the point where we ran out of bombs, and we grounded our bombers because there was no more targets left to bomb. Like, capitalists have no business talking about atrocities or genocide or any of that kind of fucking shit. Like, the Yemeni genocide, the Palestinian genocide, the fucking concentration camps along the Mexican border. Like, get fucked. And the idea that this guy is like, oh, you know, socialism did, you know, it had, you know, there have been, and all, doesn't name any, doesn't actually say anything. He just cedes this point completely, which shouldn't be ceded. Like, go fuck yourself. What atrocity? Let's talk about it. What atrocity? Let's talk about it. And when you actually get to talking about it, you realize, A, they don't know what they're talking about, that they are illiterate, and B, they're willing to elevate like small-scale regional conflicts to the same scale as literally world wars that destroyed the European continent, that literally the enslavement of the African continent. That's the same as mishandling a famine. Get the fuck out of here. Like, get the fuck out of here. That's some delusional, whingy shit. Nobody listened to this guy. Fucking idiot. Ugh. Americans, if you don't vote, you can't complain. French people, fix the economy or fucking die, bitch. USA people, haha, French cowards surrender. For sale rifle dropped once, never fired, cheese-eating surrender cowards. Also USA people, whoa, direct action is way too spicy. Find me a capitalist boot to lick, I'm way more comfortable with that. Yeah. Yeah, debunking the myths of deaths attributed. Well, and my favorite is the Harper-funded and Trudeau-funded Victims of Communism Memorial. Do you know what the Victims of Communism Memorial treats as victims of communism? Nazis. That the Victims of Communism Memorial is memorializing the deaths of the Nazis that the communists inflicted on the Nazis, rightfully inflicted on the Nazis. Like, this is who we're defending. We're defending the Nazis with this victim of communism memorial. Like, it's disgusting. Operation Mockingbird. Yeah, the CIA has thousands of journalists and writers in their pocket. Yeah. Yes, the French, who helped the Americans win their war of independence, surrender all the time. Exactly. Yeah, well, I mean, asking Americans to remember history, like this is the thing. Like, this is how illiterate and detached from reality Americans have become, that they genuinely feel like they can talk about. And I saw this happen. Richard Wolff had a debate with like a Harvard professor, and the Harvard professor was bringing up this atrocity point, and Wolff fucking schooled him. Wolff was just like, what are you even talking about? Like, do you not read? He didn't say do you not read, but like, that's what I'm like fucking coming out of this. And they don't. Yeah, rubbing 2 brain cells together too hard. Well, and it's such cheap point making, right? Like, the United States and Western capitalism was born out of atrocity. Like, one of the first acts that they did was they took women and children off of the land that they were working as serfs and jammed them into factories, right? Go read William Blake. Read some William Blake. Like, this guy's talking about, like, infernal machines and demonic enterprises. Read Dickens. Like, literally, they're taking children and jamming them down chimney pipes. Like, it's gross. American schools are reductive of all history, including their own. They jump from ancient Latin American civilizations such as the Incans and Aztecs to the Romans and Greeks, maybe doing a little bit on feudal China, to European colonization of Americans, barely dipping into the beaver waters, then the American War of Independence, American Civil War, the U.S. entry into World War II, and it's always done with this, like, rah-rah America. Like, we were on the side of freedom. Like, that, the Civil War was necessary and good. The Mexican-American War, the Spanish-American War, the War of 1812, yeah, the First World War, the Cold War, the War on Drugs, Civil Rights Movement. Yeah. Yep, or The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. Like, no, I mean, I am convinced now more than ever that, like, and at the highest level of institutional learning in America, I am convinced now more than ever that that these guys are illiterate. Like, they're just fucking illiterate. They don't know what they're reading. Hey, Vince, it has been a while. I'm doing well, bud. I'm doing well. I thought I lost you, bud. I thought that you were never coming back. You were one of my most regulars, and you just kind of dropped off on me. Yeah, Russian Civil War, Boxer Rebellion, the Russian River Wars, the Banana Republic, Oil Wars, Native American chiefs like Red Cloud. Yeah, all disregarded in the nation's 245 years of existence. Yeah. Hollywood turned Dickens into delightful musicals. Yeah, exactly. Well, institutional learning, even in Canada, the basic curriculum hasn't changed in, 40 years? Yeah, good point. Oh, no, I never... Well, and Richard Wolff really laid this out, right? Like, he said he's a PhD level scholar coming out of Harvard University, an economist, and they never made him read any Marx. Like, think about that, guys. Like, think about that. Like, here is a field, the field of economics in Harvard University, some of the highest level education that you can get in America, and they don't read Marx. You're illiterate. You're illiterate. Like, if you're not reading Marx and you're talking about capitalism, you're illiterate. You don't even need to agree. I'm not even saying that you have to agree with Marx, right? But the fact that you never read Marx, it does mean that you're illiterate. Been busy with school and stuff. Oh. Don't break it too much, Vince. I'm just happy you're here, bud. I'm glad that you're doing well, bud. In the 21st century, if you want even an undergraduate degree, you have to get acquainted with Marx. I read Marx for my poli-sci undergrad 5 times. How can you not even read it for econ? Yep, exactly. Well, and things are changing. There was actually a really interesting article that came out maybe 3-4 years ago now, and it was out of Harvard University, and they outright admitted it. They were just like, yeah, we got to start reading Marx. Like, we got to start getting acquainted with this. And the big reason they've got to start getting acquainted with it is because they're starting to look like fucking assholes. Like, they look stupid. Like, it's going beyond, like, any kind of rational position. Like, it is to the point now where I'm seeing, like, YouTube people like myself. Like, if I ever encountered somebody from Harvard, I would just assume I'm speaking to somebody who's illiterate, right? Because I am. Because I know they're illiterate. I know they're not reading the material. I know that they're stupid, right? And you start to see people like Jordan Peterson, right? Peterson is fundamentally illiterate. I think he's read 3 books, like, in his whole career, right? But like, he doesn't know anything about these subjects. He's walking around saying that, like, Marxists are evil, and he's never read Marx. He doesn't know anything about it. And when he went and debated Zizek, he got fucking embarrassed. It was a total embarrassment for him. Yeah, is this where Peterson comes in to rail against Marxists? Yeah. Like, and the arrogance of these guys. Like, Peterson literally read the Communist Manifesto the night before he was supposed to debate Zizek, as if there hasn't been like 100 years of development of Marxist theory since then. And just like this like slurring, you know, kind of lovable looking teddy bear guy wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants absolutely rolled over Peterson because Peterson's illiterate, right? Well, but what's so funny about that is like Zizek didn't come out strong. Like Zizek just looked like a guy who was kind of just talking about a subject he knew something about, right? He wasn't like pounding the pulpit. He wasn't like going after Peterson. He wasn't like swinging hard, right? He genuinely sounded like he was just talking to a group of children, like a group of just students, right? Because fundamentally Peterson is a child that never grew up. Like he's never really encountered genuine conflict in his life. Like he's never actually had hardship. He's never needed to know anything or learn anything, right? Like he's literally what happens when you take a guy and put him in a room by himself for 20 years, right? He just comes out with a kind of masturbatorial book about why he's great, and comes out with odd theories about how to improve the world, but he doesn't know anything about the world. He's been living in isolation his whole fucking life, coming out to just kind of espouse nonsense to anybody who will listen to him. And like, and then what happens to Peterson after that is he falls into a coma, right? Because, you know, he doesn't take care of himself. He doesn't eat vegetables. Like, what do you think's going to happen, bud? Anyway. Well, guys, this is the end of the stream. Vince, you came in like right in time for me to shut it all down. Please, guys, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. The algorithm loves comments. If you've got $1 jangling around in your pocket, think about sending it my way. If you are already donating $1, maybe think about upping it to $2, right? That would really make my day. That would really make my day. I'll see you guys all on Monday. Always remember, you are a divine being standing on divine energy. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Good luck. We're going to need it.